Hello and welcome back to Blood and Ashes. This is episode 47. I'm your host Mo, and I'm joined as always by my well-rested and well-traveled friends Jody and Willie.
Woo!
Hello.
I've got many fish facts for you now.
It's been a long time.
Welcome back, man. Yes, it's been 8 weeks since we've recorded an episode of this podcast. Do you guys remember how to do this?
It's mostly just talking crap, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's not much different from what we've been doing for the last 20 plus years.
Just record the crap that comes out of your mouth. Gotcha.
Yes. Now, on social media and on the podcast feed, I've dropped a couple of hints about some of the things that we've gotten up to. Do you guys want to give us some highlights of what you've been doing with this time off?
Do you have a minute? Or 10?
Let's let Willie go. Go, Willie, go.
Yeah, Vil, I mean, you went on quite an exciting adventure. Jody, you went on a pretty standard adventure.
Yes.
Yeah, I got in a car and drove 4,600 kilometers.
Oof,
that is like from the West Coast to Boston, for the American folk. I don't know what it is in your weird distance measuring scope. It's a couple of spans or something. And then I caught a lot of fish in tropical water. My son was good.
Camping on, what was the island? Fraser Island.
Fraser Island, yeah. Had to fight
Nice.
off dingoes a couple of times, but par for the course on that place.
Now, people are going to think you're joking just because you're in Australia, but you sent us photos of the dingoes.
Yeah. The dingo really tried to bite me. He was quite cheeky.
Did he try to bite your baby, who's now a
Oh,
grown
nice.
man?
He took my baby. I was actually quite furious because he stole the last, and the fish was on that evening, man, and the dingo stole the last bait, ate like a half a kilogram of pilchards. That was pilchards for the evening's fishing. So I was pretty fucked off about it. And so I accosted the dingo with my voice and booming aggression, and the dingo didn't flinch. He fucking came right back
give a
at
shit.
me.
That reminds me, I need to steal Adrian's joke on Twitter and ask how many 5-pound trout did you catch while on your trip?
Well, no. There is a specific trout that is in there, the coral trout. No coral trouts, but we've hit a lot of bluefish, they called in America, shad in South Africa, and tailor in Australia, but the same fish, different names, different places. Heaps of those. Got some golden trevally, giant trevally, hooked up on a couple of sharks, but never landed one. They bested our gear, sadly. But holding on to a monster screaming a reel is always fun.
Nice.
And yeah, man, a lot of live bait catching, darts. Just a great fishing trip, man.
And Jude's 18 now, so you could enjoy a couple cold bevies with him.
Yeah, he was very happy to cross the legal boundaries into Australia, where he's very welcome in the pub, and got served a couple of pints and pies. We went for 7-course meal quite frequently, 6 stubbies and a pie. That was good.
That's what I was waiting for it. Amazing. It sounds epic. And I mean, some of those photos you sent through were amazing. How about you, Joe? What did you get up to?
I only managed 2,500 kilometers, which is something in miles.
Up your kilometer game.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My country is not as big as Australia, so
Nope.
I'd have to do a lot. But I went south coast to north coast of Spain, took the kids up, didn't go camping, just hung out with the in-laws, the grandparents and the cousins. It was all family do. My brother came over from Poland, brought the cousins. Yeah, lots of cousins this holiday. So yeah, that's what we've been doing, people. That's why, if you're a regular listener, we've been gone for 2 months. It's because of all of this.
I've been
one more
stirring
thing.
the pot every now and then on Twitter, at least in your absence.
Yeah, thanks, man. Someone has to do it. Yeah, and also just the last thing is that I have a disease now where I can't stop telling airport jokes. The doctor says it's terminal.
Oh, Jesus.
God damn it.
That's your quota for the episode, Joe.
Thank you very much.
No more.
Amazing. Okay. let's move on to some more mundane topics, like the chapters that we are going to
Oh,
cover in,
shit, yeah.
this episode. I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually kind of thankful for the subject matter here. I think if we had to jump straight back into what would amount to be the climax of book 5, I wouldn't be able to do it justice. I mean, we just mentioned that we've been, I almost said off air. We haven't recorded an episode in about 2 months, so I feel I'm a little bit off my game. So maybe these more sort of mundane story chapters are a good way to ease ourselves back into it, because I'll admit that I have now read ahead, because we are planning on doing another recording next week, which is, quicker than our normal turnaround time. And I've already read the chapters, and whoa, things kick off in a major
It's
way.
coming now. I
Yeah.
I
just feel
haven't.
like I've been stuck in a time loop waiting for this because we've had was it 2 or maybe 3 failed sessions planned. So there were
Yes.
multiple days spent preparing, and then okay, cool, it's happening this weekend. What do I do at work? Sit and jam away my administration while I listen to the Wheel of Time chapters again and again
Fires of
and
Heaven
then
has
again.
been a slow burn.
It's been a slow
These
burn, but
chapters as well.
we also need to recuperate sometimes and get those
Mm,
family connections and our feet in the sand, hands on our legs,
Totally.
and four-wheel drive vehicles not getting stuck.
nice.
Well, I'm energized and reinvigorated. And like I've been saying to you guys in the last couple of days leading up to this, I'm champing at the bit. So, without any further ado, let's practice our favorite section of the show, which is callbacks. All right. I sort of offhandedly mentioned that Swan and Moraine might have arrived at the White Tower on the same day when they were novices, and yes, they did.
Nice.
Interestingly, Moraine had already learned how to channel a little, which means Moraine is a wilder.
Hmm. Can you be a wilder if you grew up in a palace? Like wilder
good
to me
question.
is like someone in the bush.
It
sneaking
carries
it.
a certain implication,
It
yes.
does.
But
Maybe that's
I
just
mean,
my
good
own
question, yeah.
prejudices. I don't know.
She's surrounded by Isodyne advisors and
Yeah.
yeah.
But yes, technically speaking, Moritz, I don't think wilder has anything to do with your physical surroundings.
No,
Well,
no.
Jody,
yeah,
it's
if
I mean,
it's
it's
not the
gonna
tower.
from the context of the tower.
Yes, yes, okay.
All right. We speculated about whether there is any link between Taim and the Red Arger, and nothing that I could find, nothing in any kind of damning way. In fact, he was freed by the Black Arger members from the Reds, So we were talking about how they were potentially setting up, false dragons, and, whether Swan actually knew for a fact, she was lying about that whole story, and no real link between Taim and the Reds. Then we laughed about the phrasing of finely turned calves, and someone wondered whether that was ever deemed an attractive feature. And they do seem to be something of note in the 17th and 18th century, but not as regularly as some people seem to think. It could stem partly from the phrase to make a fine leg, which only means bowing in a genteel way and not actually anything to do with how fine your leg is. Um, and it's mentioned 8 times in the entire series. So it feels like one of those things that's, called up all the time. And I've actually found someone that went and tracked them all down. It's because it's mentioned 5 times in the Fires of Heaven, but then in Lord of Chaos once, A Crown of Swords once, and Path of Daggers once. And that's all the mentions of a finely turned calf in the entire series. So not nearly as ubiquitous as the smoothing of skirts and tugging of braids and the other regular
The folding of
phrase
arms beneath breasts.
Yeah,
That
beneath the
popped up.
bosoms, yes.
Yes.
Joe, you asked which Black Archer sister enjoys torture. Well,
Not
more
one of
than
them.
the others, because it was Tamali or Tamil.
I knew it was
or
Tamali.
Tamail.
I goddamn knew it.
Yes, I mean you just guessed again offhandedly in the moment, because she's the one that leaves with Leandrin after Moghedian had sort of compelled her to live and tied off her shield, and it was her. You were right. Your instincts were correct. I mentioned Nynaeve eventually bonding Lan, but I went and I double checked, and she does not actually cast a bond weave on land directly. It's Moraine's bond that shifts to Morel, and then eventually from Morel to Nynaeve, so she doesn't do it in the traditional way. That happens in book 13.
What?
Yo.
Wow.
Yes. Crazy, eh? I've got it in bold. Yeah, I also couldn't believe it. Then we were wondering, like, what were Tom and Julian doing half dressed in the middle of the night when Birgitta arrived? Like, almost hinting at, like, what? Why are they half dressed together? But I went and double checked, and they were both asleep, and Birgitta's arrival actually woke Julian. And that's what they say when they carry her into the way. Now, since we've spent quite a lot of time not recording episodes and therefore reading out listener submissions, I have quite a list of listener submissions here, so stick with me.
Gotcha.
Michael Murphy wrote in to comment about the abnormal and disparate sort of behaviors that we saw from the whitecloaks in Mardessen and then in Lugard. Remember, in Mardessen, they just let the guys run away while they were making a big fuss. And in Lugard, when Swan just looked at them funny, they wanted to investigate, right? Like it was this weird, why are they portrayed as being so laissez-faire in the one town and then so militant in the other? And Michael wrote in with a pretty cool theory about that, saying that that is actually kind of typical bully behavior. If you consider the fact that there are repercussions to their intervention. So when there are no repercussions, they puff up and they get sort of pushy, like in Lugard around Tarvalon, again, on the outskirts of Tarvalon, not in the city. Rand and Matt, when they sort of, posture with them in Baerlon in the beginning, terrorizing Tinkers and Perrin and Egwene and that sort of thing, then they get real pushy, right? But if there are potential repercussions, like fronting a lord in Amadisia, which is the reason given in that chapter why they wouldn't go after them, or inside of Tarvalon itself, or even actually fighting in Eamon's Field, when they don't join the fight with the Trollocs and stuff. When the rubber hits the road, they back down and they cower away and that sort of thing. But when they are sort of the reigning dominant force in the area and there's no one to hold them account, that's when they get sort of pushy. So
Kind of like jackals and dingoes.
Yes.
Dingoes.
Much like dingoes, yes. Our resident dingo expert here is immediately spotting similarities in their behavior. Then Jacob writes in with some disturbing headcanon, prompted by the fact that he was around episode 20 of the podcast when you wrote in, and around about that time, Willie was really going on about pot scrubbing and how much he hates it. And Jacob
I'm
says
still on
that, that it's not necessarily that they have so many bad cooks burning the food into pots or anything, but that the girls are scrubbing a never-ending stream of chamber pots.
Ooh, that's even worse. But why would they do it in the kitchen?
No, that can't be.
I don't know. Okay, yeah, so like I said, disturbing headcanon.
But okay, I need to go back to this pot scrubbing. Okay. Yes, we're talking about Tarvalon, the White Tower, the magical tower, which I still believe is Terangriel in itself. Surely they had like a lavatory of some sort. I mean, they've got magic to their disposal. Like, do Aes Sedai's even poop?
Sure they do. But we certainly, I mean, I have a memory of chamber pots. Didn't the novices' quarters, like your bed, a chair, and a chamber pot? Well, that's like, I don't
Something
know.
like that, yeah. I think there's been mention of it.
Maybe it's only the novices.
Maybe
Aes Sedai have flushing toilets.
Maybe the novices, yeah. The Aes Sedai have toilets, the novices have chamber pots. Then Matt writes in to echo some of my exact sentiments recently, which is to say that he also remembers loving book 5 and it's his number 1 book, but he cannot fathom why. He can't remember at all. Which I only put in here so that I can say that there's someone else that agrees with me that they love book 5. Spoiler alert, the coming chapters reaffirm that in my mind. Right. I can see why I love this book. Then I raised the question a little while back about when Swan is fronting the Saladar Aes Sedai, she is sweating. And I was saying, but isn't that a thing not of the power? Her stilling should not have any effect on her ability to stop herself from sweating. And a lot of people actually wrote in with theories about why that is, a lot of them sort of overlapping and supporting each other. So Richard Jackson and Ian Yellen think that maybe she sweated on purpose so that the Aes Sedai would see her as being cowed. She later bickers with Leanne, and that is done purposefully to make her and Leanne seem less likely to be colluding. Like they're sending all these signals to the Aes Sedai to
that
try
would
and
be
make
very
them
clever.
seem.
But
It would be.
would they then be able to turn? Well, I suppose then if they've learned how to control perspiration, that they can switch that control off, and then it's boiling hot, and then you sweat.
John O'Pearce wrote in to remind us of exactly what the trick actually is, and it's explained in A New Spring by let me see. One must be unruffled and calm, as it is explained to Moiraine by another Aes Sedai in A New Spring. So they actually, in A New Spring, explain to you that it is a thing of concentration. And so first of all, you have to be concentrating, and it is just about being calm. So maybe the stress that Swan was feeling in the moment made her that she couldn't be as calm as she needed to be to prevent herself from sweating, which is what Sarah on Twitter also wrote in. Now, those are all very sound theories, but I would like to quickly read to you from the book the exact passage that I was referring to. Open casement windows with panes cracked or replaced by oiled silk let a breath of air stir in, but not enough to cut the heat. Swan told herself that she did not envy these women their ability to channel. She was past that, surely, but she did envy the way none of them perspired. Her own face was quite damp. So she's envying them here, meaning that I would assume she wants to also not perspire. So it's not being done purposefully. And they even invoke here their ability to channel. So while all those reasons given by the other people were good, the phrasing of that still makes me feel like she would have liked to not be sweating.
At that moment, she's also lying. So, I mean, I know very much if I'm pushed into a corner as a kid and had to start lying, you get red and sweaty.
Never happened, surely.
Oh, man, with me, daily occurrence. I was a bit of out of control kid.
Yeah, look, I mean, unclear. Another listener, Levi, writes in about Swan's tactics here, and he thinks that she actually deserves some credit for how far she's moving. And this ties in with what you're saying, Billy. It's a life or death situation for Swan, right? Like what she's doing here and presenting herself and the case that she's trying to make and giving herself this purpose to go after these people is life and death for her, because if she loses that purpose, if she's not accepted here as someone that is useful, that whole, the depression that comes with stilling will potentially be able to take over and result in her pretty, like her death in not too long a period of time. So for her, hanging on to this sense of purpose is a life or death situation. So that could be adding to the stress, and that could be, preventing her from being calm and in a position to actually control that stuff. So there's still a sliver of a possibility of it being one of those reasons, or all of them together. All right, let's
one
move
more
on.
possibility.
Okay,
is that this
let's go back.
Could be, an idea that was being developed still by Robert Jordan, and he didn't quite have it down by book 5 because it's explained in New Spring, which was written after book 5. So maybe that's
After
where he
book
came
five.
up
Oh
with
yes.
it. So maybe he hadn't developed the idea fully yet. Could be.
Now, New Spring has popped up twice in this conversation now, and it beckons me to ask the question, when are we going to fit New Spring into our run?
Bonus content. That would be at the end of everything.
Maybe one day when we
Christmas
start that
special.
It's a good question, Phil. I mean, we'll talk about it. Maybe we read it in the order that they were written, right? Like we should go find out when New Spring was published and slot it into the main storyline.
My belief was that you read
at
New
that moment.
Spring after book 5. And I think that is how I did it the first time. But I might be completely wrong, as I often
How
am.
fortuitous.
And
What a coincidence.
Ian Yellen writes in with some other comments as well. He said it was interesting to note that Birgitte only has a half memory about another female warder, considering that warders are a thing of after the breaking. So in the grand scheme of things, it didn't happen that long ago. So she has clearer memories of the Age of Legends itself before there were warders, but she only has a half memory of a female warder having existed before. So um, maybe she had only ever heard of it. So maybe when she was, a previous version of herself in the real world, maybe she didn't have any contacts with warders and she only heard like in passing that, a female warder is a thing. But he was saying it's odd unless like maybe she's remembering herself, and maybe like because time is cyclical and she's remembering herself, it is the furthest possible it could possibly be from that memory. Phil,
I
you both
have
have
a
your fingers in
theory.
the air.
I'm
I have
pointing
a
at
very
Phil.
good theory. Yeah. She lives in Tel Arundred.
Used
She,
to.
she used to. However, we now know there's different universes, if we want to call it that. What stops her to be pulled into one of those other universes and also maybe be a hero of the Horn there, or live a life in one of those where
Well,
she may
Tel
have been.
Arunriad is described as the sort of the hub
Mm,
of all of them.
yeah.
So
So
there isn't a different Tel
there's not just a
Arunriad
one
from...
way. So she gets
No.
pulled into a different um, alternate reality where women are all warders and bonded by male Aes Sedai because the female Aes Sedai all went crazy. Hey, I don't know. These things is
Maybe.
possible. If you're talking
Interesting.
about
I mean, with the multiverse
metaverses.
and infinite possibilities, I mean, yeah.
I like it, Phil. I like it.
Man,
Thank you very
we
much.
haven't even started with the chapters and already deliberating.
I had a lot of
I
time
love
thinking Wheel of Time standing on a beach,
We've
man.
had a lot of time, yeah. So everybody bear with us. Yeah, we're going to put it all out on the table. Ian was also wondering the same thing that Kerry Katz was wondering, and that is, how the hell did Elayne become such a good cook? When would she ever have been in a kitchen cooking? I mean, okay, sure, she probably ate really good food in Cairhien, in the palace, but how did she learn how to cook all these like capers wrapped in, thin slivers of uncooked beef, and like it is
Kids
gourmet stuff that she's putting forward
who
here.
are exposed to fine dining at a very young age develop a very big interest in flavor and cooking and how it's put together. They quickly discern between bad cooking and good cooking, and inquisitive nations of intelligent people will drive them to now ask the question, why is this so much
Elayne is
better than...
inquisitive
Yeah,
and has proven to be intelligent, but she was also a princess, and would Morghese have allowed her to spend her time in the kitchens learning to cook?
yeah, of course. Lini would have said, you never know what's going to happen. Someday you need to cook for yourself.
One day you might be in a traveling menagerie and it's your turn to cook. What you gonna do? He has a caper recipe.
Better learn to walk on a tightrope as well while you're at it. Kiri had a couple other thoughts as well, and one of them being that she's a little bit more sympathetic to Swan's treatment of Min than what we were. She was a bit taken aback. And then she was quite offended when I said, of course you would defend Swan, Kiri. And her rationale is that, I mean, until very, very recently, royalty listened to her. And, when she said jump, they said how high. And that sort of thing won't disappear overnight. And I know it hasn't been only one night, but it's been a relatively short time. And Richard Jackson also points out that later she does take up those menial jobs. So, admittedly, after Min has left to go find Rand, Swan is the one that has to like wash his shirts and fold them and all that sort of stuff. So she does eventually get put in her place. But I think we were all just very protective over Min. Like, Min's literally saved her life, and then she treats her like shit, which was, a bit.
She should be washing Min's clothes, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Damn Skippy.
All right. Last one. Last callback. Last entry from our listeners. And this one from John Pierce again about the gateway in Shawnchan. We were wondering, and again, I think our last episode speculating about why the Damane would not necessarily have just learned how to make gateways from seeing it. And that is because, it is a complex weave. Not just any channeler can do it. And whenever we've seen people learn a weave, it's when it's in the process of being woven and not when the weave is complete. So the Damane didn't see Avienda create the gateway. They didn't see the weaves that she put together to actually make it happen. They only saw the finished product. So she likened it to like if you see a tapestry, I mean, you can see it, but you don't know how it was put together necessarily. You didn't see the weaving of it. So that is a key differentiator, which I think is actually a big part, right? Like the Damane didn't see her weave it, so they don't know how to put it together. And that makes sense to me.
I would liken it to a complex fishing knot, like the one you'd use to tie.
Of course you
Not a
would.
tapestry that's actually woven. A fishing knot.
Yeah, fishing knot, because there's very complex knots. You can see it, it's tight, it works, but you can't decipher it, like how it was knotted.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for callbacks. Good one. Thanks everyone for writing in. I mean, those were some great comments.
Yeah, shot, guys.
Keep them coming. Now, before we jump in, let's quickly recap because I bet you guys have forgotten completely what happened on the last episode of Blood and Ashes. So,
No,
previously,
listen to it again.
previously on Blood and Ashes, stuff happened. The end. Jokes. All right. Nynaeve, Elayne, and Tom and Julian have been practicing the acts for Lucas' show. Julian reports that he spotted Galad among the whitecloaks in the nearby town of Samara. Elayne tells Nynaeve she thinks she can make an Adam and other Terangriel. The girls lament their position of being trapped between whitecloaks and the Prophet's mobs, with the Forsaken hunting them, and Nynaeve needs to remember the town where the Aes Sedai are gathering and get there ASAP. Luca is all over Nynaeve at dinner, and according to Elayne, Nynaeve is not doing much to discourage him. Nynaeve insists on being the one to visit Teleran Riyadh because she has questions for Birgitte. And when she meets her there, she's taken to a meeting where they spy on Margidian, who's in turn spying on a meeting between Lanfear, Ravin, Samael, and Grandel. They return to the menagerie in the dream world, but Margidian follows them, incapacitates them both, leaving Birgitte for dead in a heap while telling Nynaeve she's going to use it to lure Elayne into a trap. Birgitte manages to fire an arrow at Margidian, hits her in the chest but misses her heart, and Margidian seems to banish her from Teleranriad before fleeing. Nynaeve wakes up crying, thinks she's killed Birgitte. Tom and Julian knock on the wagon door holding a collapsed Birgitte. Nynaeve tries to heal her, but it has no effect, so Elayne jumps in and bonds Birgitte as a warder, and it seems to stabilize her. The girls realize Margidian probably has a good idea of where to look for them now. The next morning, they explain to Birgitte what happened, and she agrees to be Elaine's warder proper and her friend. The next day, Nynaeve is waiting on Birgitte hand and foot, and she feels incredible remorse and extremely hard on herself, which annoys Birgitte. Birgitte then blows everyone's mind with an incredible display of archery, and Luca welcomes her to the show. She chooses the name Marion for herself, telling Elayne that it is one of her names from a former life. And then also, in another part of the world, Margidian, back in the real world, commands her black artificers to heal her after getting shot by Birgitte, and Leandrin takes the opportunity to try and best Margidian, but fails. Margidian shields her, ties off the weave with a complex knot, and compels Leandrin to live, then leaves her in the charge of the merchant whose house they have occupied. Whew. That is everything that happened.
Very good. I had forgotten all of that.
Yes, I thought you might have. I mean, I had when I typed all that out. So that leads us to our next chapter, which is chapter 37, called Performances in Samara. So, Willie, why don't you tell us about that?
Surely will do. This is a Nynaeve perspective chapter, and they are rolling into Samara. It's a little bit of like a procession. So kind of imagine the circus coming to town. Yeah.
It's literally that.
Literally that. Now Nynaeve is still not used to her hair being colored. They all got their hairs in bronze and browns and blacks and what have you nots. It's soon as they sort of Nynaeve is standing in her trailer, reflecting on the parade in, and she's joined by Birgitte, who is in the same dress as Nynaeve, the twin of the red dress, except she's got an even lower neckline, and she's not ashamed to wear it. She wears it like a Damani woman, and she's like, "Why are you covering yourself up, Nynaeve? Like, just you're a woman. Be proud of it. Wear it. Own it." And Nynaeve is her meek mouse self with Birgitte, And Brigitta's getting pretty pissed with it. She's like, if I sit down, you bring me wine. It's like you're like this little puppy that's just serving me the whole time, and pushes her, saying like, "What if I tell you to lower that neckline another inch?" And Nynaeve just sort of like blushes at the idea of it. She can barely wear the dress as it is. But Brigitte tells her like, "You need to pull your shit together because I liked you, of who you are or who you were. I don't like you now. I don't like this you. I made my choices. I can deal with the consequences of my choices." And Nynaeve saying, "Yeah, but if she hadn't been such a coward, she could have done something." And she's like, "Don't confuse cowardice with fear. Like, you're not a coward. You were there. It's fear is another thing. Like, it happened. Get over it. I'm in a nice, pretty red dress now, and I've got a new colored braid. We want to go shoot some arrows, drink some ales, just get loose. You know, Brigitte wants to live life." Nynaeve gets to the point where she even says to Brigitte, like, If you want to uh, miss and shoot me, I would totally understand." And she's like, "I don't miss." It's like, seriously, nickname, Silverbow, get with it. In this pushing of Nynaeve, she even says, maybe I should get a stick like Littell or give her another stick. Like, really, really pushing on Nynaeve. So eventually, Nynaeve decides to exit the wagon, and in her own thought, she is already like, dare this woman speak to me? So she goes from meek Nynaeve to angry Nynaeve. It's the two emotions we see in her at the moment. That's really playing out. Now they camping half a mile outside Samara. They were asked to camp that far outside of the town, so if the boar horses break loose, that it wouldn't destroy, for the safety of the residents. Now there are heaps of people in Samara because we also have the prophet and his followers that is pulled in there and basically drinking and eating the place empty. So there's not an inn, there's not a stable, there's nothing available, which is fantastic for Luca. He's just Valen Lucas stoked. There's coin to be made there. Now she started walking and drumming through the crowds and started watching some of the performances that's being done. And in this, she spots a thick, short fellow with a top knot and a sword on his back with an eye patch, and doesn't realize off the bat. She just now Julian starts his act, which I would have actually loved to see. It sounds like a really good one,
Yeah.
where he acts as a drunken, or maybe he is drunk, who knows, but walking into the show and climbs the ladder with people shouting him on to carry on. And Luca, now from the bottom, "You fool fellow, get down there." But he does his whole little tightrope with a mock fall and gets all the way back to the other end and all the way down the ladder and gets to his mug of ale again. And then only it's like shunt. It's a show with a big bow and a flourish, and Luca being sort of more the show taker than poor old Julian that was up on the high road after drinking some ale. Now, even the fellow with the top knot was laughing at that. He found that quite amusing. Then Elayne's show came on, and she was in breeches and uh, like a coat, which Nynaeve is not happy about. So it's just very upset that a queen's daughter should be walking around in public like that. But she walks up and she'd now properly learned to tightrope walk because they can't channel. There's too much fear around channeling, so they become true performers. And I think Elayne is pretty stoked about this. She does her walking in antics, loses a bit of balance, regains herself, and then the applause in the crowd goes wild, and she decides, I'll milk it. And she even does a little cartwheel on the high rope, which is quite impressive. And yeah, the crowd absolutely loses their shit. Uno at that, I mean, Eye Patch Man at that point, like, she's a bloody queen. She's a bloody queen. Um, likens her to being a queen. Yes, that's correct. And that is where the chapter pretty much ends. Just want to double check before I traverse into
I have
other
a note here.
chapter.
The chapter ends when Nynaeve recognizes the man and sets off
Yeah.
after him.
Yes, that's it. Nynaeve recognizes and clicks, I know this man, with a top knot.
Yes.
So it's a really short chapter. It's a tiny one that
Mm.
is just them getting to Samara, the show getting started, and Nynaeve recognizes Uno.
Now,
Discuss.
Joseph,
now,
you look
if
like you've got something profound to say.
I'm leaning back in my chair. Shit's serious. It's
Here we go.
if Kerry thought like, how the hell was it Kerry? How the hell did Elayne learn to cook like that? How the hell did she learn to do cartwheels on a tightrope? Haven't they only been together with the menagerie like a week or two? Again, this is a time frame thing. She's never done it in her life before. She had to use the power. This is a
They
high
say
level.
in this chapter, this is the first time she's done it without the power.
Yes.
This time.
It's confidence, man.
But she must have been
She had
practicing.
the ability to practice. Yeah, they practiced the whole time. And Tom also assisted and helped her in practicing. And in fact, Tom was standing there sweating underneath the high rope. And when she came down and the crowd flooded them with sort of everyone wanting to just lay their hands on her because it was so marvelous, Tom was the first one there to sort of kick people in the face and say, back off.
But it's not just Elayne, it's Julian as well. Do you remember how shit scared Julian was the first time he had to go up there?
Yeah.
That's why I think
Something is
Julian was
weird.
really drunk.
He probably did have a little bit of Dutch courage, but I mean, his drunken act was definitely put on for the benefit of the crowd. But yeah, I only have 2 notes for this chapter, and one of them is Elayne really just became an actual tightrope walker on top of being a fantastic cook.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, look, like Forsaken and Drakkar and all kinds of things all in this book. But we've got a problem with this woman walking on a rope. Yeah, that's where I draw the line.
Unbelievable, so unrealistic.
So unrealistic.
Yeah,
anyway,
very unacceptable. No, I loved it. I think it was great. I think she enjoyed being loved and cherished by people for something other than Queen Aes Sedai.
Yes.
Just for your skill.
And I think it's also supposed to show us how Elayne is she's interested in the world, like she is not that prim and proper princess. She likes cooking. She's into the adventure. She's often portrayed as the sort of outgoing one and the brave one, and she's not afraid to like slum it, with the commoners and stuff. She wants to go sit in the tavern common room and have wine, and I think that is all just in service of making us like Elayne. And I mean, let's face it, it works. It works on me anyway.
Also, you get people that are just good at everything that they try. Fuck those people, but they exist.
Yeah, I wish I was one of them. I am not. My only other note in this chapter is that Birgitte calls the bow that Luca gave her a knot-riddled branch broken from a cross-grained tree by a blind idiot in the middle of the night.
Yep. Tell us what you really think.
So good. Thanks, RJ, for that. Did you guys have anything else? I mean, Willie, you said it. They don't say it in the chapter, but we know this is Uno. I think he's the only person with an eye patch in the whole story.
Yes, and a top
and
an eye patch, and short, and stocky, and
with the sword on his back. Yeah, exactly.
He might as well have worn a shirt with his name in black bold letters. I am Uno.
Heart Shinar.
Well, that's a beefy boy.
Now, in this chapter, after I read this, and I must say, like after like a lot of these menagerie chapters, I've really had to think about like, what is the point, right? Like, what is this chapter actually trying to get across, and what is it telling me? So, I'm going to start for every chapter we do. I'm going to just at the end of my summary, I'm going to try and sort of come up like, what is the purpose here? What is trying to be conveyed to us here? And for this one, I thought that what we're seeing here is, again, setting the relationship between Nynaeve and Birgitte, while at the same time bringing Nynaeve down to earth a little. It's sort of like a recurring theme, right? Like we're seeing Nynaeve being subservient and timid, which is abnormal. And we also see that Birgitte is properly allied with Nynaeve and Elayne. She is invested in them. And then she's not holding her sort of expulsion from Tel'aran'rhiod against them. She's here because of her own decisions, and she's not holding it against Nynaeve and Elayne, which I think is apart from giving an entry to Uno and then leading on to the chapters now, I think the underlying message of like how the characters are behaving and stuff, that's what's coming through for me anyway.
I mean, maybe she's also tired of living repeated lives. Like, cool, this is my last one. I'm
This is
going to go
something
out
new.
with a bang.
Yeah, this is totally new to her. I suppose her first life was the only time she was free. But since then, this is a hard chapter to get into. This whole Nynaeve groveling crap and all the man bashing amongst the women in this chat.
Yeah,
I was just like, I had to put down the book the first time I tried to start these chapters. I can't deal with this right now. I'll come back later.
All right, so let's try and turn through them a little bit. Chapter 38 is called An Old Acquaintance, and Jody, get stuck in.
Les old acquaintances. So we were with Nynaeve, and she's hurrying after this mysterious man with the top knot and an eye patch. Who could he be? She finally catches up to him, and it's Uno. Surprise, everybody. And she calls out to him like, hey, Uno, because she remembers his name. And he turns around and looks at her boobs. And then she realizes, oh, wait, she's still wearing that red dress for her performance. So she covers herself up. And then he raises his eyes to her and he was like, oh, you. I remember you. So like Neve's like, yeah, man, we saw each other. I was at Faldara and also at Terminhen with you know who. Like what do I call him? Can't say the Lord Dragon out loud in this crowd, so she just says Rand, and he's like, "Ah, oh, yes, okay, I recognize you. I remember you now with Rand and the whole thing." And it just immediately just grabs her arm and starts pulling her away. He's like, "Come with me." But she, of course, pulls herself free. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. The horse handlers that are there from Van and Lucas Circus with the cudgels that are protecting the money as the people are paying, they move towards her, but she just waves them away, and they look between her and the money and go, "Well." I know what Luca wants us to protect, so they go back to the money. Then eventually, like Uno's like, all right, fine, just come with me. I won't drag you, but you've got to come with me. And she's like, all right, I'll go with you. Risky. Like this whole chapter is Nynaeve taking stupid risks, but anyway, off she goes. They move through they move towards the town of Samara, and they're going through all the other shows. So there's a big party in town. It's not just Val and Luca. It's like every menagerie under the sun is there. Did we miss something? What is going on in this town? Is it like their local fiestas or something?
No, it's because all the people are there for Masima. It's like there's
Is that it?
50,000 people following this guy, and he decided to set up shop in the last couple of months over there.
Okay.
So it lures people trying to get some money.
All right. So then everybody else is saying, well, there's all the people. We'll go there. All right. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
So she wants to know what the hell he's doing, of course, in the demanding way that she does. And, you know, he's just goes into a rant with flaming this and flaming that. And he's trying to save her and take her out of there. It's all dangerous. We need to find some place to talk without, you know, people hearing us, and flaming, bloody, flaming. Nynaeve tells him to watch his dirty, bloody mouth. And he tries throughout the rest of this chapter in conversations he's having with her to stymie his his way of speaking, successfully sometimes and unsuccessfully others. And he's like, listen, that this is no place for her to be. He remembers her and who she was with, and that blue woman and that brown woman, talking about Moraine and Varen, and like he has some coin for her and he wants to get her to Tyr, since that's apparently where he's heard last that Rand is. So these people, now I'm wondering if this is set like these chapters are set at the same time as when Rand left Tyr, or is he already back up in the north now and this is in the same timeline? Because their information is old. I mean, he's already gone to the Waste and done everything there and returned back. He's already in Cairhien.
He wasn't in the Waste for very long.
Was in
Tyr
he was in the Waste for weeks.
Disappeared. Yeah, remember he was
at least
Tyr
a month
and disappeared.
Mm.
So there's not a lot of news that left.
And the
Plus, we know
pigeons
how
are
unreliable the
so
pigeons are.
Those
untrustworthy.
goddamn pigeons. We'll just blame it on the pigeons. Next T-shirt.
I don't think it's super long ago, Joe. The way that the chapters sort of alternate between the storylines, I don't think this would be so far back.
Yeah.
I mean, Rand left Tyr in the beginning of Shadow Rising, or like after a couple hundred pages in Shadow Rising, right? We are now
Yeah.
almost at the end of Fires of Heaven.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's been a
Yeah, but the
long,
thing
long
that
time.
ties the timelines together is the visits in Talaran by the girls. And those visits
Yeah,
were
I
there,
suppose.
and
True.
that
That's
ties it
true.
together. So there's a definite link in the timeline. It is just
Mhm.
purely no one wants to send pigeons to Amadisia because they're going to get eaten by the hordes of sparrows.
And the
That's a
intel is just bad.
yeah, Intel is bad. Like I keep okay. I suppose I should just get over the bad Intel. It is what it is. All right. So anyway,
Mm.
he wants to get it to Tia. That's apparently where Rand is, unless she wants to go to the island, as he puts it, as they are surrounded by weirdos. But also, he's heard that the old boss lady has been put out, possibly stilled. That they burnt the whole city to the ground. Like there's rumors flying like crazy at the moment. She tells him that look, she is with Elayne, and she's actually the one that you even said has a face like a queen, and he freaks out about that. He's not he's not stoked that a queen should be flaunting herself like that in her tight breeches and everything. But that's besides the point. That they are doing well, but they could use a riverboat. They're looking for a ship to get out of there. But well, Nynaeve asks him, on the other hand, like, what are you doing here in Samara, by the way? He tells her, like, well, yeah, remember that, well, you might not remember, but Moraine had sent us to find one of her contacts in Johanna, like me and the rest of the Shinarans that were with Rand. But when they got there, they found out that this woman that they were supposed to find is dead and buried, like long ago. So even Moraine's information is way out of date. And the relatives of this old woman had never even heard of Moraine, so they were lost. They were just standing around there, waiting for nothing. And Massima started speaking to a bunch of different people, and eventually he became the bloody prophet of the Dragon Reborn. So this is a bit of a shock to her as well. And they all just hung around him because he was the one with the money. Now that he's started a cult, he has lots and lots of cash. People just give him stuff all the time. So they figured, well, we're in the middle of nowhere, far from home. We'll just hang out with him. We don't really, follow what he
I'm
says. We
not
don't
going to
believe
say
anything.
I'm not going to say they give him money. I think he pretty much extorts it out of them with their lives.
Later on, when you're
Well, he
speaking to
didn't
him,
have that power in the beginning.
yeah, no, people just
Oh.
like, and he was there, and he's like, we need food, I got my men with me and everything, and we're preaching the word of the dragon, so people help. But anyway, that's the cultish behavior. So he says, like, hey, would you like to go and see Massima? I can take you as well. Maybe he'll be able to get you a riverboat. I mean, like, anybody in this town who's going to be able to get something for you, it's going to be him. And she's like, sure, why not? Another bad decision on top of more bad decisions. Just running away with the Shinaran into town. Why not go see the Prophet of the Dragon as well while we're at it, and see if we can get a boat out of him. There's some time before Brigitte has to shoot arrows at her, so let's do it. He also on the way is telling her, like, listen, don't mention Tarvalon, okay? Since Massima isn't very friendly towards the Aes Sedai, which is, basically like everyone else on this planet at the moment. So they're still not at the town yet. So they're at their town gates now. They're walking into the town from the menagerie because it is, 500 or half a mile away, 500 paces or whatever the hell that is. And they see the local guards, but there's also tons of white cloaks. So the guards are eyeballing the white cloaks, and the white cloaks are eyeballing the people. So like there's a little triangle of mistrust going on there. And Nynaeve asks Uno, are these white cloaks causing any trouble here? And he's like, where do they not cause trouble? Of course they're causing trouble. And he tells her, like, listen, just the other day there was this woman performer at another show who was doing sleight of hand tricks, and the white cloaks accused her of being an Aes Sedai. And then riled up the mob, and the mob broke this woman's neck while trying to drag her away to the gallows, and then just hung her corpse anyway. And I was just like, holy shit, man. That's some hardcore stuff. But mob behavior in desperate times. And anyway, Masima had the ringleaders of this mob executed, but everybody knows it was the whitecloaks who started this crap in the first place.
Mhm.
You know, isn't it always those guys? So what? Nynaeve is quite used to all these threats of violence. She has indeed faced Mortin. My apologies. So she's like, well, okay, let's go see this dude. And so she takes the lead, and they pass through the city gates to go see old Mr. Prophet. And that's just how that chapter ends. Another short one.
Yeah. Vil?
Nynaeve, just head first. Let's go. Not
Yeah.
like Uno. Let's go and sit and have a chat over tea at my caravan. Something,
Yeah.
I'm also have a show to do. She's running away from a fear of doing that arrows. Like
That's what I was thinking.
anything else
Totally.
is
No, I
gonna
mean,
be
she
there.
admits it later on. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
totally that.
Yeah. She thinks to herself when Uno stops to look at the Seredit or the boar horses that it looks like he'd seen them before. He has at Folmay.
Yeah.
On the wrong end of a charge.
I think the whitecloaks took that charge head on, so he was lucky.
Yeah, fucking Jeffrem and his what the children advance at a trot.
All of you
Idiots.
trot towards your deaths. Let's go.
And then I had I laughed out loud at Nynaeve thinking of Luca. She had never met anyone as stingy. This is
Really?
the pot calling the kettle black, right? This is Nynaeve who threw like a silver penny at
Like
Luca.
he wouldn't even
for his
spend money
efforts.
on. He wouldn't even spend money on paint on the name of the shows.
No. Yeah.
What does she
I
call
just
him?
thought that was pretty
She
rich.
calls him tighter than the skin on an apple. It's like, whoa, that's pretty tight, man.
Go take a long look in the mirror, Nynaeve. And then I also my one note about the Shinarans in Johanna was that Moiraine was never going to succeed at getting orders to them. I don't know if she even tried, because we thought in previous episodes that did she just forget about them? It seems so unlike her to be forgetful of such a thing, because she certainly never mentions it where we see. I mean, we're never in her head, hardly ever. She never talks about it or anything, so we just assume that she didn't do anything. But it seems like even if she tried, the message wouldn't have gotten there, because, like you said,
No.
Joe, the old woman that she had sent them to was dead already
Yeah.
when they got there. So
Unless
they
she
were
knew
doomed.
that.
They were always going to just be floating.
And she just sent them on a
Yeah.
wild goose chase because she didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah, no, she didn't.
I got bigger things to worry about. You guys go there, speak to this lady. She'll tell you what to do. Yeah.
So what did we learn in this chapter? Not an awful lot. Just basically getting up to speed with what the Shinarans had been up to and how they got there, and then sort of like specifically Masima and the general tension in the area and the threat that the dragonsworn sort of pose to this area. Like, it seems like they can be whipped up into a frenzy fairly easily at the drop of a hat. If Masima had to say something, they would just burn the place to the ground. It's the sense I got.
Yeah, and also I think, for first-time readers, finding out that Masima is the prophet is kind of a shock. I mean, we just know it all the way through, but I don't recall this being a first-time reader being like shocked by it. But now in hindsight, I can look back and go like, all right, because they introduce and they talk about the prophet a lot, and you think, ooh, who is this guy? Is this another Forsaken trying to stir up shit?
Yes.
So many possibilities. It's Masima.
It's just a nutcase.
It's just a
And then-
nutcase. Exactly.
And then, I mean, you think back to the last time you saw Masima was in the mountains at the beginning of the Dragon Reborn, before Rand ran away to go find Kalandor. When Perrin steps in the stream with one foot, he's got like a one soggy foot, and Masima stops him and asks him, why is the Lord Dragon doing this? And Perrin just gives him sort of like an offhanded comment, and Masima's like, yes, this is the Lord Dragon's plan. And you can see the beginnings of his sort of like feverish devotion to Rand already manifesting back there, which is cool.
The soggy boot incident, as it is now formerly known.
You remember the soggy boot incident?
Of course.
Okay, let's forge ahead to the good stuff. Chapter 39 is called Encounters in Samara. Tell us about that, Vinny.
Biggie, this one. Nynaeve is now being led by Uno through this very busy sprawl of a town that is not short of cutpurses and thieves and but definitely short on food, it seems.
Mm.
She's also got some real fear driven into her by the presence of the children. She's to the point where she even hides sort of her shame, as she would refer to it, with the load, like in quite a hot day, walking with a woolen shawl covering up herself. Now, the streets are very creative. I don't think it's a very well educated town because a lot of the signpostings for shops is void of words and just emojis,
Just pictures.
It's
just
like IKEA
pictures.
instructions.
Yep. And this is not a town that you see the regional folk and okay, cool. We're in Samara, and all of these people are Amadisians, and they have a similar likeness. There are all kinds of people, from sea folk that she picks out in the crowd to people, a Tarrabona woman that's wearing dresses that would make even uh, Brigitte, blush. It's a mixed match of people, and is this all his followers coming from all over? Sort of a question I have, or is there a fiesta there, like a big trade convention or something? I don't know, but I think it's all for Masima.
Yes.
Now Reagan joins up with them, and obviously Uno gives him the strong-handed, arm-to-arm handshake. Um, they turn down an alley, and there's still you can see gilded guards that surround. So there's still like civil watch. What would they? The Queen's men is around,
Mm.
and wherever you can think that there's just going to be clashes between them and the Children of the Light. Um, when they get to this door, there's guards there, and Uno and Reagan both hand in their swords, and I'm like, whoa, a Shinaran parting with his sword. But apparently, there's been an attempt on the Prophet's life. Therefore, he doesn't even trust them, the Shinarans,
Mm.
close to him with weapons. They get sort of into an entrance hall, back alley entrance hall, and there's just this grey old woman sucking on her teeth, sitting there. Said, "Oh, the dragon can't be the dragon, the prophet can't be disturbed just yet. He's still in audience." And Nynaeve sort of smells like the cooking that she's cooking is just like cabbage boiling in water or something, like really
Yeah.
peasant
Cabbage
food.
soup.
Like, then this person is not like dressed to let someone of stature with 50,000 followers or whatever he has. It's like kind of all a bit dirty, you know. Now Uno warns her, like, just watch what you're gonna say, bloody hell, for once. Like, your words can actually get you decapitated with this nutbag. Like, just hold your tongue, please, because he knows he spent some time with her. She's got a bloody feisty tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Massima's living a very modest life, like a true zealot. It's
Mm.
it's not a flashy life at all.
He reminds me of the High Sparrow from Game of Thrones.
It's exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. That's where I was going
Dirty
to go with this.
rags, tons of
Dirty
power.
rags, insane, too much power for
Yes.
a dirty, ragged man.
Yeah.
Now, the Masima at this stage is actually in an audience with the Queen, Alindra. That is, we'll get to
Sure.
a story of how this became sort of the fourth ruler in 6 months in Amadisia.
Oh, that's right. I
But
mean, Samara's is in
In
Gildan, not in
Gildan, not
Amadisia.
Amadisia.
those,
It's
I
on the
keep saying
other side.
Amadisia of the
It's
river.
just on the other
It's
side of the
on
river.
They're at the border.
Right, Gildan, sorry. So she, at that stage, is also now following the words of Seamuth, basically tells her to hand over her jewelry, which she immediately does, like gold rings goes off, whatever, earrings out, and it's basically, you woman must walk in the light, and this procession goes out. Nynaeve then gets in and presents herself to Msima, and he immediately sort of asks her about her dress. Like, how can she just this is going to lead men into temptation and it's wrong. And Nynaeve basically is taking a massive risk here, just trying to stand up for herself with like, you will not tell me what to wear. And I can imagine Una like, it's saying, I'm not saying, don't.
Like, I shouldn't have left my sword downstairs.
Yeah, it's just like this is going to go south. But she calms herself down and gets on topic. Like, look, I've been summoned. Now, she and Masima has now sort of gotten reacquainted to the point that, like, I remember you, and you were you grew up with the Lord Dragon, and this is going to be fantastic. You can preach to the people and tell him how he was as a babe. And she's like, wisdom. The best wisdom is to promise after a spanking not to throw a rock again in his life. Like there was no bloody wisdom, bloody Lord Dragon. But Nynaeve then sort of said, hey, but the Lord Dragon has summoned me, sort of playing into his allegiance or false allegiance, whatever allegiance there is in his head. And he's like, no, you can't let the Lord Dragon wait. You must go. And also then offers Uno and the Shinarans to escort her to make sure that she and her compatriot arrives there safely. And she's like, okay, score, we got some more swords, which will Julian and Tom would be happy about, sort of resting. You don't have to stay up all night, standing guard and all of that. So she's quite happy with that. And she just has to remind herself the whole time, a man is like an oak and a woman is like a willow, and she knows when to bend. And I'm thinking, like, Nynaeve knowing when to bend. Like, for fuck's sakes, that's not true. You lying to yourself. But this also now puts Masima on a path out of there, because he's like, when he's done wrapping up this area and turned the people to the light, he's going to move to Tia himself. And Nynaeve's like, yeah, fucking fool plan if I've ever heard one, but you do what you need to do. Now, even in this, Nynaeve is angry with Rand because she had to refer to him as the Lord Dragon. Like, I'll box his ears when I see him next for having to meet, like, grovel like this. Masima then tells her to go in the light and dress more appropriately, especially if you're going to be presenting to the Lord Dragon. And like, now at this point, Uno and Rhaegon basically grabs Nynaeve by the arm and marches her out the room. And eventually, when they get past the old beaten up person sitting boiling cabbage and into the alley, she rounds on them and she's like, "What the bloody hell? Why are you manhandling?" He's like, "You cannot watch your bloody tongue. You were 5 minutes away from being decapitated." Like, obviously, she doesn't understand how insane he is. And Uno lets her know that he was going to decapitate some lady, had called Rand on his name, and called immediately for a chopping block and an axe. And after much pleading and repenting, got her to be dragged behind a wagon in the street to be flogged by the people. And her people could just stand and look on. They couldn't do a single thing about it. And that's where High Sparrow is just like what they did with Cersei, walking naked through chopper hair or get thrown with cabbages. It's just all pretty insane. Now, as they walk and talk, Nynaeve's like, and what's his next thing? He's going to just stop having marriages and children. He doesn't want women and men looking at each other. And Una tells her, no, this nutbag will walk into town and take 1,000 men and 1,000 women that don't know each other and just marry them in the name of the dragon. Like, there you go, you're married. Go make more.
Bar.
Just insane. But as the Shinarans are, and I mean, Uno just walks and a guy selling pies doesn't even take the money just to get out the way and just like leaves the woman that's been handed pies. Like, just everyone gets out of the way, even the white cloaks. Like, not even the white cloaks get in the way of these Shinarans. But Uno picks up, we're being followed by a white cloak. And immediately Nynaeve doesn't do what she's told. It's like, don't look. She looks back and then says, okay, no, change the course. As soon as we hit this out, I need to see who it is. So she forces them to turn down an alleyway. And she turns, and of course, who is it? Her heart goes soft and flutters in her belly, and the pretty face, it's Galad. He had followed them and tracked Nynaeve down. I'm going to quickly just round back. I missed one thing here. Part of their talks was because Nynaeve says to this guy thinks he can speak like this to a queen, and he's like, that woman, that's jewelry that was taken there, is the bloody
Yeah.
queen. She's the fourth bloody ruler of Gildon since they've arrived there. The first king was killed in a hunting accident with which they suspect was Dias Daimar in action. Then Elizal took control. She sent the army in to try and quell this prophecy nonsense. And then she took poison. So it's been a rough period for the rulers. Then there was a next woman who, after just 2 weeks in power, quickly decided to flee and marry a merchant somewhere
Yeah.
far away. Which her people basically woke up out of bed. It's like, hey, you remember her? You marrying her? Get dressed. And that put what is her name now? Leandra or whatever, Alina Drab, as the queen, and she's a wise queen because she's doing what she needs to do to stay alive.
Reagan says this. He says, I do not know whether she really believes what he preaches, but I do know she took the throne of a land on the edge of civil war, with whitecloaks ready to move in, and she stopped it the only way she could. That is a wise queen, and a man could be proud to serve her, even if she is a Southlander.
Ooh, is he going to follow her later? Now we're going to have to put a pin in that and come back, Moritz. But there's another thing. I think it was Uno or Reagan. One of them was talking about her, saying like every time she comes in with some jewelry when she comes to speaking, because she knows that she's going to have to give it up. Like she knows that she can just take off her rings quickly and give it to him, and she can get out of there. Like she's got an exit plan. She is wise.
Yeah.
She's playing the
when
hand
you see
she's
her,
dealt.
you don't know who she is.
Yeah.
She's just a woman with some jewelry.
Yeah, so it looked like a lady, just a lady
Yeah.
but Nynaeve picked up the type of firestones or something. Whatever jewelry it was is pretty high up. It's above merchant level. But yeah, Masima is the high sparrow, dirty nutbag that is just, we know where it's going.
Yeah, I think the High Sparrow comparison is mostly physicality, what he looks like, but like the High Sparrow is super intelligent and pretending to be a bum. This guy's literally a crazy bum. That's just who he is.
Well, he's... I mean, I guess a broken clock is right twice a day as well, right? But I mean, he says that he thinks that the tower will try to control Rand.
Yeah.
He's right. Like, in that sense, he is correct. Yeah, so my whole, like, my little, what is the purpose of this chapter is like a reintroduction to Masima as the prophet, and my only note is effective. He is menacing. Like the way that he's described with, like, looking straight through her, and like when he starts talking about Rand, like you can see his mind has veered from the topic at hand, and the fervor is just burning, and he's completely fixated on what he perceives
there's a shine in his eyes,
his purpose. Yeah,
like ooh.
Yeah.
But isn't the whole purpose? I don't know if you mentioned this. I may have zoned out. That she's there to get a boat off him, another river boat.
Yeah,
yeah. She says that Rand has summoned.
She's been
her.
summoned to Tyr.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, she's on a long list of places and people to get her boats.
Yeah. I had a bit of a chuckle at Nynaeve as she's walking through the manor house. It's mentioned that she's developed something of an eye in the last year. She can like discern the quality of the tapestries and the crockery and the silverware and that sort of stuff. Like she's learned to go. She's now, she's been in palaces and, like around royalty and that sort of stuff. So she's developed a discerning eye, and it stood out to me because later in these chapters, I think Matt as well. Matt's got like an expensive cask of wine or something like that. Matt's also developed some tastes.
Yeah.
And my last note was the previous king died in a hunting accident. Another one? Kings, stop hunting. You're gonna die.
This chapter, it's insane the amount of parallels that it draws with A Song of Fire and Ice, or Like kings dying, hunting accidents with boars, names.
I mean,
high school.
that is the first one, the first instance of this that came to mind. But I think there's another reference to a king or someone dying in a hunting accident. Wasn't it that love triangle in Tyr? That
Yes.
lady, one of her suitors or something, like, he also dies in a hunting accident. It's
One
just like
that's
the
now
most
in,
convenient way to kill someone.
Yeah.
The one that's now in Cairhien, Cape Town.
Cape Town.
Cavalier.
Yeah, isn't it that one's husband that she had the affair and
Something like
Yeah.
that, yes. He died in a hunting accident from a spear through the back.
Yes.
I
Those
swore
balls
it was
fight
the
back.
boar.
It's like you said earlier, Bill, like when she accidentally drank some poison or something,
Yeah.
you know? Like, it reminds me of, did you guys ever see the movie Mystery Men, where Baby Bola's
Yes.
dad died because he fell down an elevator shaft onto some bullets?
Yeah. Yes. There's a whole other
All right,
tangent,
so
let's not
Massima
go
back in the
into.
game.
Yes, Massima's back. That's the highlight. Or low light.
So let's the other low light. I mean, I remember when reading the series the first time, just immediately taking, a very obvious and normal disliking to Massima. Just like, come on, dude, you fucking self-righteous piece of shit. Because you helped or urged to not like Massima from the beginning. When he's the Shinaran soldier, he's already a jerk, right? And he's not gotten any better.
No.
Imagine if they just left him in Faldara and he didn't go with. Like,
Yeah.
What a
it would be
boring
so
book.
good.
What would we read
All
about
right.
in book 5? Then?
Well, we would read chapter 40 called The Wheel Weaves.
Ooh, there's another chapter.
Why don't you tell us about how the wheel weaves, Joe?
Wheels they weave, apparently. I could also call this chapter Discussions in Alleys. So Nynaeve darts down that alley that she was dragging the Uno and Regan into, and Galad follows them. So that's where when she has a peek. As she's turning left, she looks at him, she goes, God damn it, it's him. So they're down a little road, at least. And she thinks, well, she's down in this tight little road, cobblestone, looks like every other place. There's a couple of doorways, a couple of shops and stuff. So she figures he'll probably go and look inside of all of these shops, but I'm going to go hide in that tiny little alley, and darts in there. So around the corner comes Galad, looks at all the different shops and doorways, looks straight at the alley, sees them, and walks there. So plan A failed immediately. He heads straight for them. He has a conversation with her about it. It's like, yeah, eventually when he's talking to her later, like, you always do the unexpected, so I figured you might be here. So Uno and Regan have their swords out in a flash as he approaches the mouth of this thing, and they're trying to protect her and shield Nynaeve from Galad. She is angry enough at this point with herself, mind you, to channel, but she can't risk Mogideon or the other Black Aja sensing her channeling, so she has to rely on her two temporary warders, which is the answer to your question if you've been along for this ride so far as to why she hasn't channeled to save herself or protect herself. This is the reason why. So she understands now why they have warders, but she's begrudgingly accepting their help. I think that's the only way she does things, begrudgingly. So Galad appears at the entrance to the alleyway and informs the Shinarans that, look, guys, I don't want to kill you. I just want to speak to Nynaeve. And he's like, listen, Nynaeve, let me come through and chat to you. There's no need to make me kill these guys. And they're both standing there with their swords out. And he's just resting his hand on his pommel. But there is just tension in the air. And she's heard the rumors about him being so good. And he seems to at least think that he is at least as good as the rumors. So she's not going to chance it. So she's like, all right, she tells the others, let him by. Let him come in. We'll have a chat with him. I know this white cloak. He's not as bad as the rest, I assume. But everybody she's noticing as well behind them is like thousands of people walking, well, hundreds of people walking by and looking and checking them out. So they got to be quick because rumors will soon start spreading. 2 Shinarans, a woman and a white cloak having a chat in an alleyway. That's a fine pair. So Nynaeve demands to know, of course, what he is doing in Gelden. He's laughing at this, obviously, because he's like, I thought I was going to ask the questions. But sure, I'll let you know. So he tells her that, look, he had orders originally to go to Saladar, but those plans changed because of the Prophet, and that's when Nynaeve's face just absolutely changes, and he actually thinks, are you sick? Are you well? She's like, Saladar. We're all finally a collective... Thank God she remembered, sigh from every reader at this point, that she remembered where it is. So it finally clicks in her mind, and she's like, no, I'm fine. You continue with what you've been saying. Galad tells Nynaeve, of course, that he's been sick to death with worry for her and Elayne since they escaped the other little town that they were in, Sienda, I want to say. I'll be surprised if I can remember towns' names now at this point. So anyway, he's been worrying about them so far, and his chance would have it, because of the Prophet bringing everybody into town. It brought them, it brought the menageries, it brought the whitecloaks. Everyone's there because of that. It brought the Shinarans. So he eyes those Shinarans and tells her that he has heard that the Prophet was a Shinaran, and hopes that she isn't, witless enough, I believe are his words, to get herself mixed up with him. And she's like, no, listen, I actually have become mixed up with this, but these two dudes are not the Prophet. All right, the other one is a bald guy, and his name is Masima. Galad is like, listen, I don't care what they are and how you got involved. I only care about getting you guys to safety and getting you out of there. She goes off on an internal rant about how men are always trying to protect women and how dare they, and blah 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 blah. The same old. So he tells her that he's going to find passage for her and Elayne to Altara, possibly even to Cairhien as well. And she's like, oh, sweet. Another guy that's going to look for a boat for me. You see, Nynaeve, men are useful. You're using them all the time. So she's got those Shinarans now. Uno and Reagan will look for a boat for her or a ship. Galad's going to do it. Masima's going to do it. So she's got some backup plans. Someone is going to find a ship for sure. And Galad tells her that, like, look, this is all I can do at the moment now is help you out with this the ship for you, since my duty is here in Gildan to the whitecloaks. So he asks her, like, so where are you staying, so that I can, come and tell you about it when I find a ship. And she tells him, well, she's reluctant to tell him at first. But she does need another person to look for a boat for her. And it's hard to trust a whitecloak. She doesn't know this guy very well. His sister does not speak very well of him, to be frank. He is a whitecloak. Jesus, what are you going to do? And like her decision, she's thinking about this as well now. Finally, at this point in her little trip through the city and all the dangers, she's beginning to think about her decisions and the effects that they could have. And how they're going to affect other people, because what she says here is going to not only affect her, but Elayne and Tom and Julian. What if, he turns them in to the whitecloaks and all kinds of things? So it could all go very, very badly. So she's all just rolling this over in her head. Galad's getting pretty impatient with her indecision, and he raises his hands to grab her shoulders, but Uno's blade is between them in a second, and when you read that line, you're like, sweet, go. But he just absently brushes it aside like a twig. Just flicks away his sword, all nonchalantly. And Galad swears then on his mother's name that he'll let no harm come to them. Like, he is begging to help them. So she figures, fuck it. I suppose I can let him help. So finally she's like, all right, listen, we're not staying at an inn or anything. We're with Val and Lucas' show. And Galad's floor hits the ground. He is shocked. He's like, you can't stay with those people. You know what kind of people they are. And she's like, yeah, I know exactly what kind of people they are. Have you seen the dress I'm in? So he's like, listen, I'll get you out of there pronto. I've got some coin. I can get you some coin. We'll put you in a room in one of the inns. But Nynaeve's saying, like, that's a stupid idea, man. Don't do that. That's going to attract so much attention. Can you imagine? Everything is full to the brim in this town. So if you're going to get us a room, it's by kicking someone else. And then there's going to be rumors that a whitecloak kicked someone out of their room to put two women in there. It's never going to end well. This is a bad idea. So he's like, yeah, actually, you have a very good point there. I agree with you. Fine, stay where you are. So Nynaeve gives him instructions on how to contact her, and then has to diffuse the situation that is happening in the alleyway at the moment, because the Shinarans still have their swords out. At some point, Uno was just resting on his. He had put the tip of the blade into the ground. He's just resting, but Reagan is intently studying the sharpened edge of his. So there's definite undercurrents of violence. She mentions in this chapter, in this stretch as well, that and I'll quote, "That's strange, deceptive calm men adopted when they were a hair's breadth away from violence." And I'm like, yeah, that's because all three of those dudes are in the flame and the void right now. That's why they seem so calm. They are ready. I mean, she is right. They are ready to kill each other seconds away.
Oh yeah.
So finally, she manages to all right, everybody, chill the fuck out. She does get them, and she gets Uno and Reagan, and to head back to Val and Luca's show, and old Galad heads on his way. So along the way, this is when Uno and Reagan offer to stay with her, and she's like, "Really? You would hang around with me?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, we got nothing else to do. We're so far away from home. We'll probably see home when we're old and we're gray and toothless." I think are their words exactly. So she thinks, "No, well, fuck it. I'll be stoked to have some other people here, and then I've got the two men, and Julian and Tom, and then I'll have these two guys as well. That's a bonus. I'll take it." On the way back as well, she learns that there are actually 15 of these Shinarans in total who are not completely devoted to Massima, and that will actually come with them. So she's like, "Oh, sweet, private army. I'm loving this." So now she'll have 15 of the most deadliest fighters on the planet surrounding her. So that would be even better. Sure, do that. Come with us, but you can come with us and protect us and all of that on the only condition that you must agree to follow my orders. Which is what she did with the men as well, the other two men. I say the men as if we know that I'm talking about Tom and Julian. Okay, everyone's on the same page. So the Shinarans, of course, they reluctantly agree. If that's the way it's got to be, to follow your orders, if we want to come with, then fine. But they can't promise what the other 15 dudes are going to say. But they'll deal with that problem later. All right, so she tells them that they must come by one by one. Don't all come at the same time. If they're each day to come and check in with her, she'll give them instructions and whatnot. But otherwise, they need to stay away as to not attract so much attention. Unless a riverboat arrives, then please come as quickly as you can and let us know. So Uno and Reagan leave her there, and Nynaeve enters the menagerie grounds. And as she comes in, she sees there's a new performer, a contortionist. Putting her body into positions that freaks Nynaeve out because it reminds her of what Gideon did to her. And we learn later that this performer is actually from that very same show that got shut down after the mob killed that woman, that magician woman, for being Aes Sedai. So apparently that show no longer exists. They burnt it to the ground and chased everyone away. So there were some performers out of work, and Valen has hired one. Through where she's walking through the show, she runs into Elayne and Brigitte, who pop out of nowhere and start directing her in a direction that she's not aware of. And tell her, listen, you're in a lot of shit. Luca was worried about you. There's all these kind of rumors flying around that you headed off with a bald Shinarian, and that you're making love to him in a carriage somewhere or something. Rumors are abounding. And that Tom and Julian and Luca left. They're out looking for you. And she's like, all right, that's great. So maybe we don't have to do this whole shooting the arrows thing. Because Luca's not here. He won't know until later. It'll be fine.
Looking for a way out.
Just constantly. So, they're so well, where the fuck have you been? Tell us what's going on. So Nynaeve tells them all the story that's happened, and tells them about Saladar and Galad, and at which point Elayne freaks out. She's like, sorry, what did you say? Who now? Galad? And she's like, yeah, I saw him as well. And she's like, what, really? Did you also just happen to have a chat with the king as well? You've seen Massima and the king? And she says, no, actually, it's not a king, it's a queen now. And yes, she was actually there as well. This reminds me of Rand when he got lost in Cairhien. Yeah. Just ended up chatting to the queen and all of these people. So yeah, she had her own little sojourn out there into the world and met all these people. And she tells Elayne about Galad and his oath, and Elaine's like, "Poof, he really said he swore on our mother." Well, that is a pretty good oath. I think he's going to follow that oath. So at first she was shocked and distrustful, but she's all right. If he swore that, then we can trust him. She's not particularly fond of it, but anyway, it's too late. Nynaeve has already done all this shit on their behalf. There's nothing they can do about it now. So Nynaeve at this point realizes that, hey, we've been walking towards where she and Brigitte will perform. All this talking and this explanation, she didn't even realize what was happening, and she's desperately trying to talk Brigitte out of it. But Brigitte's like, no, it's fine now. There's still enough light. The shadows aren't too long. Maybe I should do it with a blindfold on. These people will like that. And just winding her up so badly. So
the same joke Tom made.
Yeah, well, it works. But Nynaeve is now just completely flustered. Like, she's so flustered that when Elayne starts giving her shit about all the risks she took about meeting Galad and Masema and all of this, Nynaeve just agrees with her and tells her, like, you're absolutely right. I should have spoken to you first. She's just blabbering now. She's completely like lost her mind. And Elaine's in the middle of giving her shit, but all of this, like, Nynaeve agreeing with her kind of puts her, it takes her aback, and now she's a bit worried, and she's like, are you okay? Like, should we go call a doctor or something? And she's just blathering on, and then before she knows it, they're putting her up against the wooden fence where she's going to get arrows shot against her. She's already there. All this time has passed. She's begging for forgiveness, asking if they can change the thing. She realizes that she was stupid and she took these risks, and she needs to be punished for it. Like, really weird shit coming out of her mouth, non-Nynaeve stuff. While she's busy talking, an arrow embeds itself into the wood next to her wrist, and like, while it's still like shuddering against her wrist, another one comes out, and she is screaming and wailing and freaking out, and she can't keep it inside any longer. And there's another arrow and another arrow, and every time one thunks into the wood next to her, she lets out another yelp and another scream and another wail, getting louder and louder, and the crowd are loving it, thinking it's part of the act or something. But she is just freaking out. So when they're done and she's outlined from her knees to her head by arrows, the crowd rushes towards Brigitte. It's like a massive thing. It's like what happened with Elayne afterwards, the whole act on the tightrope. Everybody rushes towards Brigitte, not Nynaeve, which Nynaeve takes. She's a little bit pissed off that they didn't appreciate her performance, but she takes this opportunity to make a beeline back to the wagons and get the fuck out of there as fast as possible. She's back in her wagon. Uno comes that night to have a chat with her, and she just reminds him, like, yeah, just try and push Masema as much as you think is intelligent, to try and get us a boat. And if you can find Galad as well, just remind him as well, just to get this boat finding thing happening as fast as possible. And she goes to sleep thinking of ways to get out of tomorrow's performance, but realizes that Brigitte's not going to buy any of those excuses either. And that's basically how the chapter ends.
Goes to show you how desperate she is to not be fired at. She's desperate for a boat, which is her Achilles heel to begin with.
Yes, and then as well, all of the, saying, yes, I did wrong, you are right, I should be punished. Like, what? Did Robert Jordan give the book that section to write to someone else and didn't give her any information about who Nynaeve was? Just write this character.
She says to Elayne, I know I have been a fool. Yes. And then Elayne is like, hang on. What?
What now?
Who are you?
Yeah. So really out of character thing. She's just absolutely terrified. And anything else in that chapter? Because I know I left stuff out, little details.
I got a juicy bit, yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, shoot.
Now, Galad in the alley with the Shinarans. Firstly, when Uno raises his sword in reaction to his hands raising towards Nynaeve, and the way that he just taps it out the way. Sort of, there's a confidence about him that is pretty significant. But when he sort of says, okay, cool, these guys will accompany you, you've got protection. And I want to read this because it was pretty powerful for me. I am Galadred Domandred, and this woman is under my protection. As for her companion, I would count it a small loss to die in order to save her the smallest harm. If you allow either to come to the smallest harm, I will find you both and kill you. He didn't even let his sword blade lift, but he drops the hardest. Like, he's Yeah, it's
This entire
pretty
encounter, he never
powerful.
unsheathed his sword.
No. He says to them, I do not want to kill either of you, Shinaran. And then later he goes to Nynaeve, there's no need to make me kill these men. Like, it's a
Yes.
done deal. It's a given.
Like, are you trying to piss these guys off? Like, you've threatened their lives 3 times now by the end of this early thing.
But if you know where Galad's heading, like, I mean, you can buy into it. Like, if you were reading this the first time, you might think that's him just sort of being, maybe have an inflated sense of his own prowess and not knowing how badass these Shinarans are. But even in book 3, when Matt's fighting them, like, it is known that Galad is like pro swordsman. And I think in general, what I got from this section again, and maybe like just on this read, is I'm enjoying Galad a lot more. A lot of my opinion of him is colored by what Elayne says. And, she's like, oh, he will do anything to follow the letter of the law. He will betray us and blah, blah. Galad here is going against the White Cloaks, repeatedly trying to help them. And he's not just helping his sister, he's helping channelers, Nynaeve. He's got feelings for Egwene. He is not as bad as Elayne keeps painting him. He is some way in that direction. You can see like he does struggle sometimes with the notions, but Elayne paints him as black and white, and it's not that clear for him. So again, knowing where he ends up and what he does towards the end of the story, I quite dig him. Like, I like Galad. Where in the beginning, when I read the story the first time, I hated him.
He's better than Gawain.
No, that's also like it is painted. It is. You're very right. Like we read more about people talking about him, and that
Yes.
paints a picture. Then you actually have direct interactions. But White Cloak here helping them Aes Sedai. It's a very channeling woman, like very
Yes.
very big, and with
That's not black and white.
yeah, that's
And Morghese is not his mother,
mm-mm.
right? He's Tigraine's son. He's Rand's half brother.
Yeah.
So like the way that he is loyal to Morghese, a lot of his actions later in the story are fueled by what he thinks has been done to Morghese. He saved Gawain's life when they were young. He's here going against everything that the White Cloaks have taught him to save not just his sister but also Nynaeve. He's worried for Egwene. Like, he's a good guy. He's a good dude.
So let's see. Let's keep a close eye on his character arc, how it progresses.
Even on my second read, I think I was still colored by my opinion of him from my first read. It's only on this one where I'm like, okay, no. Galad, yeah, is actually being cool.
Yeah, it's just the association with the White Cloak that it sways you so badly into that. Like
Good
there's just a
reason.
bunch of bullies.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there is, with good reason.
Now, the other thing that I picked up here is how quickly Nynaeve then, okay, it's cool, they'll look after her, but then she gets them to swear sort of almost an allegiance that they will listen to her every bloody rule. It's like exactly what she did with Tom and with Julian. She like lays down the law, like this is how it's going to be done and no other way, and just very quickly starts abusing the men quite viciously there.
So wait, just on Galad still, Galad had orders for Saladar. So someone in the White Cloaks ordered White Cloaks to go check out Saladar, where the Aes Sedai are gathering. So Elida knows about it. The White Cloaks know about it. It's not exactly a secret, like people are finding out about some activity there. And I mean, who knows how long ago the White Cloaks knew something, considering how bad the information and the intel is and that sort of stuff. Like they've been aware of something happening in Saladar for at least long enough for Galad to have had orders and then change the orders and then come to where are they now in
Samara.
Yeah. So Saladar is known.
There was an interaction with White Cloaks and Mara when Min and them went through that village, was there
In
not?
Lugard.
In Lugard.
It was in Lugard. That's right after Swan found out about Salidera from that lady that owned
And
the...
then they were followed as well for a period of time. Could that information have come from there? Sort of whitecloaks reporting back there was these women that went in that direction. Sort of, okay, cool, let's give it up higher. And that it came to Galad saying, maybe check out this place. There's a woman that are tricksters.
Maybe that's linked.
Regardless of
Who knows?
what and who and why, they are very, very lucky that they got diverted to
Away from there,
Samara
yes.
and didn't rock up in a town filled with Aes Sedai and warders. They would have
Galad's swordsmanship would not have helped him against the warders and the One Power.
Not at all.
What would he have done? I mean, he would have recognized everyone.
He would also have been recognized. The Aes Sedai would know who he is.
For sure.
Morghase's son. And they probably just captured him and kept him.
They would recognize him a mile away. Oh, there's that hot guy.
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep him
Aes
here in town.
Sedai, especially the Greens, would have captured him.
Totally. He would have been bonded against his will instantaneously.
Galad also mentions that the tower is too dangerous for the girls. He's right. Another point in his...
But it's always been dangerous. Column.
That's true.
You don't have to be a genius.
The Two Rivers bowmen get a nice nod here as well. When Nynaeve is against the fence, she goes, she had never realized how far 100 paces really was. In the Two Rivers, men had always shot at targets twice that far, but none of those targets had ever been her.
Yeah.
The one of the other things is Galad obviously wanting to fish out information about Elayne. That was also one of his always trying to get that.
But all he gets is what? She's far away and she's safe. Like, don't you need to worry about
That's
her.
all he gets. Yeah.
I don't know how safe anybody is, especially if you're surrounded by Aiel and Wise Ones and the Dragon Reborn is going crazy next to you. And,
it's all relative, isn't it?
Better be in the tower, I suppose.
Yeah, so here we get some more character building and exposition of Galad's inner thoughts. Like I said, I like what I'm reading about him so far. And more establishing of Birgitte's skill, which is cool. Always great to hear how good she is. I mean, at 100 paces, the arrows are like vibrating against Nynaeve's skin, like they are making physical contact. I mean, that is hair's breadth away, right? Like that is really good.
And she made all those arrows herself as well.
Yeah, otherwise Nynaeve would be dead if she had used any other arrows. Yeah.
Now we take a big leap to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
In chapter 41, called The Craft of Kin Tovir. Willie, tell us about Kin and his craft.
Kin is a craftsman.
It's crafty
crafts.
Very crafty.
Things. Okay, no. Rand perspective. And Rand is walking up the sparsely tree-covered hilltop, which is surrounded by 3 camps. Scepter in hand, other hand on his sword. A lot of notice being brought to the fact that Rand is now carrying a sword again. He obviously had a nice scabbard and handle made for that heron mark blade in his travels to where he is now. The Tyranian lords that's in the area have sort of joined up, and this is the 3 camps, which is majority Tyranian and Cairhien. Terran men,
whatever,
and Cairhien. But Randall says like they aren't all just soldiers, man. They are farmers and crafters and shopkeepers. It's really not the neatest of armies that's been gathered around by these men. From this hilltop, they can barely sort of see the topless towers of Cairhien, and they're about 6 miles outside of the city. Now, High Lord Wyrenman is sort of leading that pack of...
He's going to come up a lot.
We're back, everybody.
You better get his name right. It's not Wyramon. I'm going with Wyramon.
Yeah. To me, it was always Weiramon.
Oh.
Wyreman.
Wyreman.
Anyway, he is so pompous about himself that just
Oh,
give us the signal, Lord Dragon. We'll take it up. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Lan mentions in this as well that it's discipline that keeps men alive, but you find more discipline in cavalry than you'd find in infantry. So Rand has got
mate,
his
wasn't it the opposite? I'm going to contest this.
no,
Okay.
no
What?
That discipline is more
cavalry.
prevalent in infantry than it is in cavalry.
No, you're right. It's more It's in infantry more than cavalry. Anyway,
I remembered
Rand is also aware that his armies that's following him, whether it be the Aiel, different septs of the Aiel, I mean, it's always just sort of a breath away between them killing each other because there's so much differences there. You've got this Lord Lynx following Wineman that is every time he looks in the direction of an Aiel man, he's got to sniff his salty
Oh.
hanky because he's so disgusted by them. And Rand's just like, at some point in time, that guy's gonna get an arrow, or he's gonna get a spear to the face, or something. Now,
Yeah.
Spoiler: he's a dark friend.
He seems like a dick. Yeah.
Right.
He does seem
Fucking
quite
asshole.
dickish. Now, High Lord Weineman thinks that he can take the city with his men. Just sort of give us the order, Lord Dragon. We'll run them down. And Rand's like, can this fucking guy count? He clearly can't count.
Yeah. Oh, doesn't he have like 800 cavalry? Like that's it. He's
Yeah,
got like
it's got
800
eight,
Yeah,
horses.
like
something
nothing.
around the swords. It's like, oh, but foot never stands up to horse. And Rand's
Yeah.
like, horse doesn't stand up to a hill.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Rand's not even
The
talking to
he,
him. He's just like trying to get away the whole time.
yeah, unfortunately he's got to have this guy. He's got to have the men, so he's got to entertain all kinds of um, lords and what have yous. He pushes him a bit on the news from what is really happening around Tyr, because apparently up and down the coast there's pirates, and he says, oh, well, if it's pirates, what's happening inland? No, it's just brigands. So there is still some unrest in Tyr, that there's a little bit of dissidence there, which is not happy to hear. But he realizes this Wyronman is a stone blind fool. Like, this is not
Oh, yeah.
someone that you're going to trust in your war council. Avienda is there still. Rand gets a brief smile from her, takes him back to Loveland. But since they've returned from Loveland, there's been no sex. Sometimes she'll forget to put out the light. Forget to
Yes.
get changed in front of
I
him.
don't think she forgets. She straight up tells him she can't get undressed in the dark.
Maybe he's just thinking
That's-
she forgets. Because he's a
She's-
fool.
She's baiting him.
Yeah.
Because in the past, she used to get changed inside the blankets, in the dark. But now, no, she's now openly sometimes undressing in front of him. But Rand ain't getting a bite of that biscuit again, unfortunately. Things have ground to an absolute halt, but she still sleeps 3 meters away from him every night. And every maiden thinks that, yeah, right. Every night they're going at it. Either way, Rand is shitting himself because
Going at it.
That's the Aiel way.
it's the Aiel way. Thanks, Joe. No, now he's shitting himself because he's waiting for the moment that Egwene's going to find out, because someone's going to mouth something off. She's going to find out, and I'm surprised that she hasn't found out yet.
Yeah.
And then he's going to have Egwene go off on him like a cracker. He thinks back to like how easy it is with Min, and then misses Elayne a bit. So his head is filled with his 3 wives at the moment. The clan chiefs are busy having their own gathering, but they are also sort of making their way. Now, all these clans they all have come together now. So Rand has got a heap of clan chiefs. This basically his war council with Lan and the rest. They making their way to this tower that Rand had erected at the highest point of this sparsely treed hilltop, and going up the tower, but before he goes up the tower, Moraine and Lang is at the bottom, and Egwene's there, and he sort of wants an answer from her if she's gonna do what he asked, and which he asked her because she's not bound by the 3 oaths. If in the battle it needs be, will she fight with the power? That's because that would be a good help for him. And we know she's incredibly well trained at fighting with the power from her collaring days. So, but she hasn't, and it's been 3 days that she's been sort of avoiding him, trying to not answer the question. But I mean, he can't ask Moiraine. The most he can ask of Moiraine is to heal people, but she can't engage in this battle. But they go up the tower, and we see some apprentices busy handling some brass ringed wooden tubes. And Kin is busy shouting at them, "If you knock my lenses out of alignment, I will kick you off the tower." Wow, wow, wow. So Rand had found himself a glass maker that's making him a looking glass telescope. And he's got 2 of them made already on top of this tower. It's his brilliant strategy because he can survey the entire fighting field. And looking through this, he's now already been able to see like a hell of a lot. Before we get there, Moraine corners Rand in this procession up the tower and saying like, "Why are you wearing a sword again?" And Rand's like, "Because I feel like it." It's like it's very dismissive. He's not going to answer it. Rand is now inspecting the city, which is basically in lockdown with the high walls. It's only birds and rats can get in and out of the city. You can see men that's on the city walls and towers around, and then of course the Shaido around the city, where they've made their own bridges over the rivers, tied up pieces of wood so they weren't too scared in crossing the water, as some would have thought. They made their own little bridges, and he even spots a sleeveless Aiel Shaido man standing there, and he thought he caught a glimpse of gold glistening, thinking like, "Hey, that's actually Cooladin down there." The foregate that we had read about on their first visit in there has now been completely reduced to ash. But that's not from the Aiel. That is from the civil unrest after Tom killed the king and the everything else happened and the granaries burned. So it's been a shit show for a while, and now it's just like climaxed with Shaido rocking up on the doorstep. Now, at this point, with him and the clan chiefs looking through, and Rock is there as well, Rand sees something streaking through the sky and sort of some Shaido taking a dive at the bottom. And he's not quite sure, like, no man can throw a spear. I can't figure out what this is. It's
I also thought, is it a ballista?
That's what I thought.
What is a
It's not
ballista?
mentioned. It's a huge crossbow, basically.
Okay,
mechanical
what they shoot
things.
dragons out the sky with.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure either way, but so they are from the towers and the wall fortifications. They are shooting and sort of trying to defend their city.
Where they can see Shaido.
Yeah, where they can.
Those Shaido were up on a hill, right? And most of the Shaido are sort of like camouflaged and
downhill.
ducking and diving. What they see here in the terrain is all these like hills and valleys everywhere with, sparse but some tree cover everywhere. So it's difficult for the city to pinpoint enemies.
Yeah, so the idea basically, Rand built his massive tower there. He found his telescope guy, and it's going to give them sort of a real good view of what they're going into in battle, and also bringing up basically his whole war council up there to have the same look, the same sort of information to go through. And that's where the chapter ends.
Cool. My first note is, of course, when I read Weiramon's name, I was like, "Oh, who's this guy again?" I read up about him. He's like, "Oh no, Dark Friend. Okay, cool." That explains a lot. I mean, Terran High Lord and Dark Friend. I mean, that's double shit. What other notes did I have here? Cairhien was doomed against the Aiel because the civil war after Galdrin's death had already torn the country apart. So like the ragtag camps that they have down there of like Terrans. Remember, the Terrans were also sent up from by Rand at the beginning of the Shadow Rising to go on this sort of humanitarian thing, but they've also kind of been ravaged by brigands and like, you know, lords sort of fighting for themselves. It sounds like Cairhien is in total chaos. I mean, yeah, Cairhien would have been a complete cakewalk for the Aiel, right? Like,
yes.
at this point, there's zero resistance. I noted here that Avienda hasn't lashed out at Rand since they slept together.
And she
Rand is like,
smiled at him. She flashed him a smile.
Yeah. So she's already incurred this toll. Like, she was fighting so hard against incurring this toll to Elayne. And now it has happened, and she sort of like accepted that. She's like, okay, cool, well, it's happened now, so now I don't need to fight so hard and like push him away constantly. Which doesn't make his life any easier, but she's certainly not as acerbic as she used to be in the past. I also noted that whenever Rand thinks of Avienda or Elayne in a romantic light, he brings Min into the thought process. Min was the only woman who didn't make him feel like he was standing on his head half the time. You know, like, oh, if only Min was here, she makes me feel nice. For us, I mean, has it been hinted or even suggested thus far in the story? I guess from Min's point of view that she's interested in Rand. Rand still, I don't think, has clicked, apart from maybe his dreams when Min seems to be present when they're skinny dipping.
It's
okay,
clear
maybe it's kind of signposted.
Everyone except Rand.
Yeah, of course. Yes. I had a chuckle at one of the clan chiefs, Mangan, who suggests that to amuse themselves, they should try catching sheep in a sack. And Rand knows exactly what he means by sheep by the way he looks at the Terrans. He's actually suggesting they chase the Terrans around and catch them in a sack for sport, because there's no hunting to be done.
and Rand actually looks at him, realizes what he's saying, and then it sees words are like, maybe later. Like, I'm not dismissing it.
Fuck, I love the Aiel. I don't know if I've said that on this podcast. Then Rand notices nothing or detects nothing on Egwene's face other than tiredness, presumably because she's spending a lot more time in Tel Aran'rhiod than what she's supposed to be. And if Rand can spot it, she needs to be pretty careful, because the wise ones are going to start asking questions as well. I mean, Rand does know her whole life, so he maybe has a bit of insight that they don't, and they might think she's tired from all the menial tasks that they set her and that sort of stuff. But if he can spot it, the wise ones are likely to spot it as well and suspect they are not fools.
Even now, she's like, looking at her. If it was not for her hair color and her height, she's looking like an Aiel woman.
I dig it. I love Egwene's embracing of the Aiel culture. It's very
she's
cool.
All super tanned, and she's dressing like them.
Rand doesn't know if the burning of the granaries or Galdrian's death led to the riots, or if it was neither. Like, he didn't know, like, was it the granaries, was it Galdrian's death? It was neither. I mean, we hinted at this before. It was after Barthanes was found dead, his allies moved against Galdrian and set fire to the granaries and started the riots, because when Tom kills those assassins in his room, he looks out the window and he sees the granaries on fire. And it's from there that he goes to go kill him. So the granaries and the riots started before.
Yeah, it's not linked
Galdrian's
to the death of Galdrian.
Not linked, no. And then I also asked about, what are these large spears killing Shaido? I also asked if it was a ballista. I've read ahead, but it still isn't revealed. And then my last note was, I was quite struck by, after all Rand had seen, he did not think Couladin deserved so easy a way out. I can be as hard as I must, he thought, stroking his sword hilt. For him, I can. We're seeing a lot of Rand sort of hardening up in these chapters. I mean, it's been a pretty steady flow, but in these chapters, and because I've read ahead in the next couple as well, keep an eye out for it. Like, Rand is being very calculating.
Rand is keen to take Couladin one-on-one, man-on-man, no power involved.
That's why he's carrying the sword, yeah.
He's ready for a fight.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to our final chapter for the episode, which is more table setting for what is gearing up to be a battle I'd completely forgotten about. The Battle for Cairhien, like
Me too.
I always think of Fires of Heaven as the showdown in Camelin, but there's this huge battle against the Shaido coming up right outside of Cairhien, and in our next episode we will cover that in delicious detail. But for now, we will cover chapter 42, which is the preamble to that, called Before the Arrow. Take it away, Joe.
Yes. So this is the chapter where that scene happens that we were talking about last podcast,
Yes.
2 podcasts ago. I can't remember now.
Yes.
But yeah, when I read this, it's like, oh my god, I'm so glad it happened sooner rather than later. But yes. Chapter 24, we join old Matrim. He is lounging in his tent in the middle of the day, drinking very expensive wine that cost him the same as 2 horses before the world went crazy, in the tent that he shares with Melindra. I don't recall if she's there in the tent, but anyway, he's just swirling this cup. He's not really drinking from it. But he's had several days to think now about this battle that's coming with the Shaido around the city, and he's not liking it. He's thinking, this is a bad idea. I do not want to be here for this battle. He's thinking, I'm not a bloody hero. I'm not a bloody soldier, no matter what those memories in my head are telling me. But yeah, the whole I'm not a bloody hero theme is rife here. So he just wants to get out of Dodge and as fast as possible. Like he is meant to be in a tavern with gambling and women and wine. That's his place. He needs to get there. He's got all these responsibilities now that he doesn't like, all these Taviran responsibilities, but none of the benefits that come with it. So he's been lying there for days, trying to convince himself that he is right in deciding to leave, basically. He's not talking to anyone else, so only himself. So, but now he's decided, look, it is time to leave. Tomorrow is this battle that everyone's been planning. I got to get out of here before then. So, maybe he'll go to Camelin, maybe he'll go to Lugard. He doesn't know where he's going to go and what he's going to do, but he's not going north. He's going to go south. And he knows that eventually he'll be back because he and Perrin need to be with Rand at Tarman Gaidon. He's very, very aware of the fact, but while he has a chance, he needs to get out of there for a bit. And then also, he blew the Horn of Valir, so he's got that to worry about as well. He's going to have to come back and deal with that at some point. All of these things are going to come back to bite him in the ass, but that could be later, much, much later. For now, he just needs to go and be free for a while. So he decides, all right, it's time to go and talk to Rand about this stuff. So he gets up and heads off to Rand's tent. As he steps out, it's hot as balls. It's still summer, is hanging on, so we know about the whole weather being messed up. This is just a reminder that we got that whole Bowl of the Winds section of books coming up, which, whatever. Okay, it's going to happen. We're just going to have to deal with it. But yeah, the weather is not performing as it should, and it should already be autumn, but it is not. So he heads up to Rand's tent. He's walking through. There's no one around Rand's tent, which should have been a dead giveaway that Rand was not there. But he enters anyway, and of course Rand is not there. But a good old Natail is there, and the Aes Sedai banner flapping in the slight breeze that's above there. And Matt is not a fan of either of these two things. So he's as he's sitting in there, he asks, Natail, is Rand going to be back anytime soon? But Natail's like, he'll either come back sooner or he'll come back later. He'll come back whenever he pleases. And Rand's just thinking this whole time, fuck, I hate you. Do not like you at all, man. He says that Natail always seems to be thinking of a joke that he doesn't mean to share with anybody, and that he's always so neatly dressed and clean all the time. Like he must have a staff, like 3 or 4 people attending to his clothes all the time, like just a pompous, slimy douche. And yeah, you're right. Trust your instincts, Matt. You're right on track there. But since he thinks, that obviously Rand must be on that tower of his with those lenses, which is a good idea. Know your terrain, which is one of the things he remembers of his memories. Know your enemy and know your terrain. He also, I think, at this point mentioned some lines about like all these other certainties that he remembers, and one of them is don't kiss a girl whose brothers have knife wounds or knife scars. Was one of them. So he's got all these like a list of rules that he needs to follow. This is one of them. Know your terrain. So he figures, well, look, I'm just going to hang around because otherwise I'll be running around the whole camp looking for Rand and missing him the whole time. So I'm just going to stay put right here with this douchebag and just, pretend to be looking at things and thinking. And he looks down on the ground. There are some maps of the area, one of the greater Cairhien area and one of like they're just around the city that has been recently drawn. And all the forces that are around it, all the tabs and the notes and things like that. So he thinks like, well, if these scouts can count that the Shaido have as much as 160,000 spears around Cairhien,
Holy shit.
that is a shitload of Shaido dogs, more than you would prefer to have. And that's that's not just originally what they were. We've got to remember that a lot of the bleakness, and when Rand told everybody that they dropped down their spears and they ran away, some didn't drop their spears and they ran and joined the Shaido. So the Shaido have grown exponentially in the last couple of, say, month or so, or maybe even 2 months due to this. And more people in the camps are leaving every day. Like every morning they wake up and there's, Aes Sedai, there are Aiel gone, and not all of them leave their spears behind. So they could be joining the Shaido. So their numbers have grown. That just takes me back to old Wyrimon there with his idea of his 800 horses that he's going to break 160,000 Shaido spears with his 800
Stone
horses.
blind fool.
What a dork. Rand should have just let him. Like, sure, go. Show me what
Use
you're
him
going to do.
bait.
And then, of course, let's not forget about the 4 other clans that have crossed the Dragon Wall, but have not yet joined and not signaled their intentions either as to what they plan on doing. So they are kind of like camped around the northern parts of Cairhien, from where they are. So nobody knows yet what these dudes are going to do. But together, their forces number about the same as Rand's. So it looks like Rand can either fight the Shaido, or he could fight the other 4 clans, but he couldn't fight them both. And it's pretty likely, I mean, it's a possibility, maybe not pretty likely, that he could have to fight both. Even if just one of those other clans joins the fight, the shit's going to happen. So while he's busy looking and thinking all about this stuff, Lan walks in and blatantly manipulates Matt into a conversation about the battle plans. He sees him looking
So
at them
easily.
so easily. So he asks, what do you think Rand should do here with this army? I mean, should we just try and crush the Shaido now? And what do you think, Master Natail? And Natail's like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a good plan. Let's do that. Which baits Matt even further into going, no, that's a bad idea. Matt's all caught up in his military planning. He just replies now without thinking. So he says, no, it's a bad idea to keep the Shaido between the city walls and yourself. Might seem like a good idea to fools like us, but to military strategists, no. Because first of all, when you attack the Shaido, he says, well, it's a bad idea for 2 reasons. Reason 1, you might push the Shaido over the city wall and into Cairhien. And he says, like, recalling on his memories and stuff, like fighting in a city is just bad news. Like, you don't want to do that. And nobody wants a bloody battle inside of a city. And so the best thing to do is actually try and shove them away to the south and force them towards the rivers. So, with the right positioning forces, they could push Couladin. He's got this whole strategy laid out already. I mean, he's just thinking about it on the fly as he's looking at the map. And you could push Couladin across the river and then harry them into the mountains, over the bridges there. But it's a pity you don't have cavalry, because they're very, very good for harrying a fleeing foe. And like all of this information that he should not have as Matt from the 2 rivers. And then Lan asks him, like, yeah, so what is the second reason that we shouldn't just squash them between the walls? And Matt says, well, the 4 other clans might decide to join the battle, and they might be on the Shaido side. So then you'd be stuck between the Shaido and the other 4 clans, and you would be smashed in the middle of that. And that would mean, you don't want to have an enemy at your back. And he asks him, like, since he's got land there, it's like, what are these other 4 clans doing? Does anybody know yet? And Ruach's like, well, no one knows which way they're going to go yet. No one has any information. And if the wise ones know, they're not telling anybody, which I thought was, come on, wise ones. If you know something, say something. They could have been, aren't they dream walking and chatting to the other wise ones from those clans? Can't they just find out? They do have a direct and very easy line of communication. No pigeons there. So I don't know why it's not being used. But anyway, so the warder, old Lan, the warder is his name, not a warder. he's nodding at Matt's explanation and very with much approval. And I got jealous at this point. I was like, I want Lan's approval. How did Matt's getting
I made a note of it as well.
I want Lan's approval so badly. And then Matt notices as well that Natale has stopped playing and he's just staring at him like he's never seen him before. And he realizes, oh shit, I let myself go and I was babbling like a fool. I should have kept my tongue in check. And he's like, well, at least I wasn't babbling in the old tongue. And then goes, wait, was I babbling in the old tongue? And we never find out, but it may have been, because both of the other people in that tent can speak that old tongue or at least understand it. So he might have been. And then, of course, Matt realizes at this point that Rand is there too. Rand had come into the tent behind him, and he was there. So he just jumps up and he's like, all right, pretending like nothing happened, just blurts out. He's like, listen, Rand, I'm going to leave. I have to go. And don't try and stop me. And Rand's like, no, I'm not going to try and stop you. And it's like cuts him short. Like, seriously, I could just go. And he's like, yeah, Rand. And Rand says, like, I've never tried to stop you from leaving. The Taviranness was doing that for you. The wheel stopped you from going. And he's like, yeah, man, when Perrin had to leave, he had to leave, and he left. So can you, I'm not keeping you here. And Matt realizes at this point as well that there's no Taviran tug. Like he can't feel it like he did beforehand, before they went to the waste, that he had to stay with him. So he's like, oh, sweet. Rand said I can go. There's no Taviran tug. The wheel is letting me free, so I'm going to get away as fast as possible. The only problem that he can see about getting away quickly is Melindra. She doesn't seem like the kind of woman to let you go when you want to go. Like, she's not done with him. So he's already planning on sneaking out early. And I'm just laughing, thinking, you're going to try and sneak away from an Aiel. Like, good luck, buddy. I can already tell
from
you.
A maiden.
From a maiden. This is not going to work. You're gonna be sorry about that. So all said and done, Rand wishes him a safe journey. Good luck until they meet again, and they shake hands. And Matt notices that, wow, he's got an iron grip now from all that training with the sword. Can feel the calluses on his hands, calluses on top of calluses, and also the herons that are branded into his hands. And I was like, oh shit, yeah. You forget all the time that Rand has those herons on his hands. But yep, they're still there and very noticeable when you shake them. So, that's the end of that. Matt feels kind of relieved when he leaves the tent, pops on his hat. Outside, there are now hundreds of people everywhere. The Cairhien lords are there. The clan chiefs are there. There's maidens there. Because now everybody's waiting to see Rand, now that he's back at his tent. In his head, in Matt's head, that is, he hears the dice rattling. And he heads to his tent whistling the Jack of the Shadows. So two things there. Is this the first time that we hear the dice rattling in his head?
No,
because I think it gets louder and louder and louder as the story progresses. Like it's deafening to him later on. But this is the first time I remember him talking about the dice rattling in his head, and also Jack of the Shadows.
Been before.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe, I don't know.
And wasn't Jack of the Shadows the song he was singing like drunkenly on that fountain wall in Ruidian?
And it also becomes the Band of the Red Hands official song later on. Like that's their marching tune. Yeah,
we'll talk about it again in the next episode.
Certainly. So we go back into the tent now, where Randon is still watching Matt leave, and he and Lan talk about what Matt had said about the battle plans. So it had been a test this whole time. They were just waiting for a moment to set him up so that they can find out what exactly is going on, because Lan had mentioned to Rand that Matt knows far more about battles than he should. Like, this is not normal. Something happened. And Rand assumed that something happened to him inside of the Teangriel, the Twisted Door Teangriel. But, doesn't want to give too much information away. It's not his thing to say that, not his place to say that. But it turns out that everything that Matt had said was exactly what Ruark and Lan and the other clan chiefs had come up with. Almost exactly the same plan. So it's proven beyond a doubt that they've got something good here. It is confirmed. And Rand thinks to himself, speaking about that hardness, now that he knows for certain, he's going to use it. He's going to use Matt. And he thinks to himself about how hard he is and that he's just going to use his friends now. Like, using Tarian lords and Cairhien nobles and shit is one thing. But your own friends, that's next level shit.
Yeah.
But he does hope at this point that Matt has a good time while he's free. In this short little break that he's getting, he hopes that everything goes well. He thinks about Perrin, and he's hoping that Perrin's enjoying himself as well, and that he's showing off his Fail to everybody, and that he got married. And I'm like, yo, dude, not only did he get married, there's a whole shit, a whole story you don't know anything about. So yeah, because soon he's thinking like, I hope these guys are having a good time and they're resting and whatnot, because soon I'm going to draw them back to me just through Taverinus and through the pattern, and then I'm going to have to use them to win this last battle. He's resigned. Like, that's just the way it is. So he orders Natail to play something that will make your soul weep, and I quote, "If you have a soul." And Natail's like,
so emo.
Oh, so emo. But Natail's like, shit, man, goes white around the eyes and starts playing some sad tune. And he asks Lan then to, bring in the clan chiefs and Wyramon and all those people. And Lan actually bows to him before leaving. Now, the second I read this, I was like, is he being kind of like cocky or something? But that's not Lan's way. That's not his way. Like, if he's going to bow to you, he's going to, he's going to do it for real, for reasons. So
I think it's dawning on Lan that like Rand is now leading an army in a war.
Yeah.
And this is like Lan's language, right? Like, this is what he understands and what he respects, and maybe is now seeing Rand commanding these Aiel and about to lead them into battle.
Yeah, he's really getting Lan on his side more and more and more as time passes. Less Moraine, more Lan. So anyway, everybody files in no particular order, which bothers nobody except old Wyramon, who is very upset that he was last into the tent. And there's awkwardness ensues, and there's no place for him to sit. It's just a weird, awkward little scene. And then Wyramon sits behind Rand, and everybody looks at him as if he's mad, because that's where an assassin would sit and stab him in the back, and then they make him move and all kinds of shit. But anyway, they all sit down eventually. I like how Rand just reaches for his pipe, reaches for Sidene and lights it, which makes the other lords a bit nervous. But then everybody else, like the other clan chiefs, they're used to this shit. They see it every day. So they're like, all right. And that's everyone's cue to, thumb a bit of tobacco into their own pipes. They all light up, and then they start discussing the battle plan. Only some minor changes need to be made now that they've seen the terrain through that new tower with the lenses. They're just going to do the last finishing touches, because tomorrow shit's going to hit the fan. And that's how that chapter finishes.
Okay, so Joe, that was definitely the scene that you were referring to a couple episodes ago. I was wondering, like, is it this one, or is there's the one right at the end of the story? I think during Tom and Gaidon, where Matt is in the room with like Gareth Brine and Davram Bashir and Rodel Iturralde and like all the great captains except maybe for old Pedron Niall. I don't know if that was the scene or if it's this one. I'd completely forgotten about this one, and fuck me if this is not like just the raddest Matt scene in a long time.
Yes, I mean, like we've been missing some Matt scenes, but I think this is the one, because I remember everybody being like, it being a thing, like, oh my god, look at his knowledge. But I think later on, when he's in that tent, everybody already knows. Well, Lan would know and Rand would know, but maybe the other ones, the other generals would be a bit impressed. But by then, it's common knowledge.
Yeah. So, Vil, did you have anything you wanted to throw in there? Probably a bit.
There's quite a bit to unpack there.
Pressure.
I mean, firstly, Matt's back. He is him wanting to leave, and Rand just so easily, he's ready prepared to have an argument about it, is, as we know, all part of a greater plan. He needs Matt at the end. Like, he can spare Matt these things, like go, run away from your responsibilities from your maiden wife and go be Matt, go gamble, play horses and whatever you need to do. But yeah, I mean, Matt laying down the battle plan is just so bloody good. I mean, like, I'm going to put my head on the chopping block saying that is our favorite moment of this book.
Totally.
Of this stretch of chapters. Like, I don't even think there's going to be any surprises.
I had to really make an effort to go put some honorable mentions in there because I figured, how could this not be it?
Totally. I didn't even
Yeah.
consider a backup because fuck y'all. I'm taking it. I'll
You didn't-
take it with you. We
Jody,
can all
the whole
share it.
chapter.
Whatever.
You lie. You didn't have a favorite moment up until now.
No. When I read this scene, I was like, "Here's my favorite moment.
You
This is
knew.
what I was talking about just the other
Mm.
time." So yeah, I was going to say just the other day.
How much did you guys remember about the actual plan
Nothing. I didn't even remember there was a
and the
battle in
battle?
Cairhien.
Exactly, me too. So like reading this, I was like, okay, cool. Let me really try and picture this. And I was like picturing where everyone is, like, the cardinal directions, like where the north and the south is, where the river is, where the bridges are. And I mean, it's complex and it's also taking into account these unknown entities, like these other four clans that you don't know what they're going to do. And you have to plan for that. I was struck by how, the problem of having to write a military genius is that you have to be a military genius. Like you have to be able to write the logic and the thought that goes into these things. And I just thought, man, hats off to Robert Jordan again.
He was a
like,
military man. He served, like, if I recall correctly. Could be talking
Yeah.
shit, but I do recall this. And also, you don't have to be a military genius. You could, get advice from someone who is.
yes, of
Yeah.
course, of course.
Or you could just play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Even that's not going to be enough.
No, as we can attest.
Yes.
But like, you could also easily just sort of like hand wave it away, like just not describing the actual tactics. Just have Matt and Lan have an interaction and Lan walk away from it and say to Rand, yeah, no, he's a genius. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He pretty much laid out exactly the plan that we came up with, a few minor tweaks. And I think in the later chapters, Ruach and the guys go, yes, we just have to make a few minor tweaks to our plan before we enact it. And I wonder if it is like specifically the stuff that Matt had mentioned that they then incorporated.
The thing that I
Perhaps.
didn't quite understand in his whole battle plan and the mentioning of miners.
Yes. I never had a chance to Google that.
But Lan also didn't understand it.
No, Rand didn't understand it.
Rand
didn't understand it. Yeah. And I don't know if we are supposed to understand it. Like, maybe it is thrown in there as a thing that is never explained. Like maybe, I'm guessing, maybe Robert Jordan made it up, as a thing that we will not understand because it's from another age where, maybe different naming conventions were used. Joe, you look like you have the face of a man Googling a thing.
Mining, land mining, or undermining is a way of attacking a walled city, fortress, or castle during a siege. It has been used since before the Middle Ages. So I think you dig under the walls to undermine the walls.
Basically digging under the walls. Okay, I thought as much, but I didn't even want
That's
to put
why
my
you would
head
need
out there for
miners.
that.
Okay.
They tunnel under the walls. That's why you need miners. Now we're all on the same page.
Wow.
Somebody tell Rand.
Matt, thinking of everything.
Indeed.
Didn't even consider that.
No.
Not going over the walls, going under the walls.
Yes. Indeed. Well, there you go.
A lot of rad madness here. Like I mentioned before, him having like paid like really like a lot of money for just a cask of really good wine. He didn't want to just drink any old wine.
Yeah.
And then just like laughing at Matt, thinking that he's somehow getting cheated for being a tavern. He goes, a man ought to be able to find a profit in something like that. Are you kidding me? Like,
nope, that's
has
Matt.
your dice rolling and gambling and your general luck not brought you like actual literal fortune? Like you have a
Literal
lot of money
profit.
to spend on expensive wine because of you being a tavern.
Yeah. But he's still in a tent on the ground and has to fight in a battle he doesn't want to tomorrow. So, there's that
He
side.
goes on to say he himself had never noticed anything twisting around him except the fall of dice. Okay, firstly acknowledging the dice, and then, which it gives him a lot of money, and it's just not true because the grey man in Tarvalon, when they fall off the bridge, he lands on him with the knife in the grey man's heart.
Yeah.
And then wasn't there another instance in the Stone of Tyr when he and Julian break in there? He sort of like he puts his quarterstaff over his shoulder and he hits a guy behind him in the head,
Yes.
a guy that had the drop on him,
Yeah.
and then he turns around and he knocks him out. And he's like, "You are fucking lucky, Matt."
Yeah.
It's so typical Matt to just be blind to that and feel like hard done by and woe is me sort of thing. He says he's stuck with all the burdens of being a Tavern and none of the pleasures.
Yeah.
Just so typical.
He
I
says-
had a good old chuckle
He
at Matt.
says, sipping his expensive wine next to his hot Aiel girlfriend.
Matt recognizes that Lugard is a suitable place for someone like him. And didn't we in a previous episode equate Lugard to like Vegas?
Yeah, totally.
So
Confirmed
yeah,
now.
Probably. Matt mentions the horn here
Mm.
and how there might be a way out of that yet.
Get someone else to blow it.
Interesting.
Or no one else
Well,
can blow it.
We know that would not make a difference.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I wonder what Matt's intentions were there. And then I asked myself, is Matt actually still the horn sounder? Because, Vil, I don't know if you haven't read the last book, but the person that actually blows the horn of Villiers during the last battle is Olver.
Oliver. Wow.
Yes.
Oh, wait. I think you've told me this before.
But how? So I was like, okay. Is RJ hinting here at Matt's death at the end of this book and getting undone by balefire?
Yes.
Mm.
Severing. Okay, Matt wouldn't be aware of this. I don't think RJ is specifically signaling that. But what happens at the end of this book is Matt dies.
Mm.
He dies in this book, and then he gets brought back by Rand balefiring Asmodean into darkness.
Yes. And like you said,
And
Vil,
undoing
the
his
fins
action.
also, like hanging in the tree, he also died. So then I went and I looked up, okay, which is it? What's going on here? It is in A Memory of Light, Hawkwing tells him, when Matt says, is it because I was hanged in my second visit to Sindal? And Hawkwing says to him, not the tree, gambler, another moment, one that you cannot remember. It is fitting, as Luce Theron did save your life both times.
Mm.
Okay.
So Matt's link to the horn is severed at the end of this book,
Mm.
the end of book 5, and it's only blown again in book 14.
And the horn is now in possession of. Where's the horn right now? I actually can't remember. Is it with?
Trick question. We should know that, right?
it's
Yeah.
it's in the tower.
It's still in the tower. Fane only took the
Took the
dagger.
dagger.
He didn't get. Are you sure he didn't get the horn?
He took it out of the case. Oh, but it's not in the case with the horn anymore. It's in its own case.
Mm.
So the horn must still just be in the tower?
Dude.
So you put a pin in it. Let's go find out where the horn of Valerius, like this magic weapon
I
that
have
brings
a pin
back.
there.
Jody has a physical pin in his hand.
Just in case. I knew this was coming.
Some more Matt stuff. Matt notes the amount of guards and precautions set around Kadir's wagons, thinking Moraine must think Kadir or some of his men would try to make off with what she had brought out of Ruidian, addressing our fears and leaving that stuff in the hands of a dark friend, of course. Moraine is also probably just trying to make sure that everything remains exactly in place for her showdown with Lanfear. So it's not just, because she doesn't know that Kadir is a dark friend, and she's not just guarding it, she's guarding it because she knows it has to be specifically in the right place. So she's keeping a fucking eagle eye on it. Jody, you hinted at this before when Matt quotes the two most important rules of war. Know your enemy, and a very close second, know the terrain. But he's annoyed by this because these are other men's memories. All he wants to remember is never kiss a girl whose brothers have knife scars, and never gamble without knowing a back way out.
Yes.
Those are the same rules. Knowing your
Know
enemy,
your enemy.
Ah.
it's
and
like never
knowing your
kiss
terrain.
a girl, and never gamble where there isn't a back way out is knowing your terrain. It's actually the same thing.
I did not see that.
Pretty cool.
Very cool.
And then I just loved how Lan quietly baits Matt into commenting on the battle strategy. Like going down on his knees and softly asking, and, what do you, and what would you do? And it just comes pouring out of Matt.
Why not?
And then my big bold letters, Lan has approval in his voice. Yes.
Indeed.
The 160,000 spears was a holy shit moment. And then
Yeah.
I also had a comment here on a note on Matt's comment about Egwene. He says to Rand, she's left Eamon's Field further behind than either of us, and
yeah.
she regrets it less.
Yeah. I remember that
It's
line.
true, hey? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
she was ready to leave before she was destined to do anything. She was packed and she had noticed that the guys were going somewhere. She was ready to go. She wanted to go out into the world and go find her destiny. But yeah, I mean,
What a
what a
destiny
chapter.
she finds. Hey? Shit.
Yeah, that's still one we're keeping secret from Willie, like
Yeah.
her contribution. Like, I want to see if I can keep that one until the very end.
I don't know, man. It's only book 5.
I've only read A Memory of Light once.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to get to those last couple. I think I've only read the Sanderson books once because I reread the series in anticipation of the last 3 books.
I don't recall when I reread it the second time. I think it might have been just for the last book, but I can't be certain.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So that was our last chapter for the evening. If there's nothing else, should we move on to favorite moments?
There's no need.
Covered.
But sure, go for it.
Should we start with our honorable mentions?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Jonna Pierce sent in an honorable mention. She said her favorite moment in this stretch is Nynaeve running into Galad and getting the name Saladar from him of all people. Like the serendipity of it all. Like, that was pretty. It kind of makes a case for the Nynaeve Taverin.
Yeah. But apparently she says later on, because when she gets back and tells Elayne that she got the name from him, she says, but actually he said it to me when they were back in Sienda. He also said Saladar to her again. So now she has a even less excuse for not remembering it. But his dreamy eyes were befuddling
Tom
her
also
brain.
said it to her.
Yeah?
Doesn't Tom talk about the whitecloaks populating men from Saladar to something else along the river, like where they were reclaiming the land? Anyway, something like that.
It's been in her face this whole time. Anyway.
My honorable mention, favorite moment, is just Galad being so confident he could kill both Uno and Reagan, but being so chill about it, like just matter of fact.
I wonder, though. They both had their swords out, and they are nothing to trifle with.
He might be underestimating them.
He might be. You mean you still have to get your sword out?
Born with swords in their hands in the borderlands, right? Like
in
where young men go prove themselves in the blight.
Yes. Yeah.
And isn't Reagan the guy that greets Lan at the gates of Faldara in book 2 when they arrive there? Like Reagan is also like, he's not just some dude, like he's friends with Lan and, like obviously has some of Lan's respect. So Reagan is also not just another Shanaran soldier. He's a dude
bunch
of
of
note,
louts.
and obviously Uno is as well.
Well, I've got an honorable mention there.
Oh, please.
Avienda finally smiling, and she's incurred her toe. She's done what she's needed to do. She's broken the ice quite literally and figuratively. And but now she's just not giving him any bite of the biscuit anymore.
It is nice, isn't it? It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yes.
A smile. Thank God.
Imagine if Nynaeve can just be nice as well.
Oh, yeah. We're getting there. We're getting there. We had to break her down all the way before we could build her back up again.
Yeah, so we'll
get to let her sink to the bottom of a river. Then we'll see. Oh, one more thing.
Oh, yes. Great. Love it. Keep them coming.
I just have an open tab here. The New Spring was published in January of 2004, right before Knife of Dreams, which was 2005. So after book 10, you have to go and read a New Spring.
Book 10. Oh, just
Can we
Crossroads
just
of
not
Twilight.
do New Spring instead of book 10? How about that?
Book 10. I'm pretty sure that on my reread, I might have read chapter summaries for book 10. I think that was the one book that I really skirted around.
I recall that book. I have read it twice, and it is a large book, if not the largest.
I think it's the thickest of them all.
And it is the most boring.
Yeah,
But
we're
anyway,
gonna have our work cut out for us to squeeze the joy out of that one.
Yeah, we can do it though. I have faith in you.
So, on that cheery note, to our listeners, please write in and tell us why you love Crossroads of Twilight more than any other of the books in the series, or maybe more realistically, let us know what you like about Crossroads of Twilight. But like we always say, send in your thoughts and your theories and send us a voice message. We've yet to receive any voice messages from our website, so please feel free. Go ahead. Go to the website, which is linked in our episode description. And at the bottom of the homepage, there's a button you can click that'll let you record a 90-second voice message. So if you're excited about hearing your own voice on a podcast, this is your chance. Ooh. And obviously, always feel free to tweet us at Blood and Ash Pod or reach out to us on any of the social media links in the episode description below.
And don't forget, 5 stars, rate, give us those rankings.
Rate
always
and review.
Important.
Do things, tell people about us, join the conversation, trick your friends into listening to our podcast, put it on a party playlist.
Morris, when will this podcast be released?
About a week from now, so that is, let me look at a calendar, around the 3rd of September.
Okay.
I say around because we're covering all the time zones in the world and it's different for everyone. But it's published at 1 a.m. on the 3rd of September in Australia.
And that is the day that trout fishing season opens, and I'll be in the mountains. So now I'll have something to listen while I catch trout.
That next weekend, I'll be in Manchester for MalkiriCon. So I wanted to just remind anybody who's in Europe, there is a convention, the first European Wheel of Time convention ever. It's in Manchester from the 9th to the 11th of September. Show up. I'll be there.
Come high five Jody and talk about how great Perrin is.
Yes, let's do that.
He'll be the guy in the Perrin t-shirt.
In this one?
The one.
The one I'm wearing right now.
What will also be happening on that weekend is we'll be recording our very next episode, which will be covering chapter 43 to 46. Chapter 43 is called This Place, This Day. And chapter 46 is called Other Battles, Other Weapons. It's pretty much deals exclusively with the Battle of Cairhien and its immediate aftermath. It's only 4 chapters and it's focused in on exactly that.
Nice.
Which I've already read and are fucking amazing.
I'll get to it.
So, on that exciting note, I will bid everyone a fond adieu and say to you this: sleep well and wake.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hi.